What's up, guys? Finlay-YT. Welcome back to another YouTube live stream with my subscribers. And today we're going to be having some fun reacting to some videos and doing some other stuff as well. And so if you enjoyed today's live stream, please remember to like, share, subscribe to my channel, press the bell notifications so news videos from without further. Let's get right into this live stream chat. Let's do this. Alright. Hi Samir, welcome to my live stream. Shout out to you. How's it going? And hey Samir, do you like my new YouTube profile picture that I changed it to from Terminator to this? And can you tell me what it is? And if you do like it, can you please tell me what my profile picture is? I want to hear it from you. Can you please tell me what my profile picture is? And if you like it or if you like it or not. I'm good, thanks, Samir. I'm good. Do you like my new YouTube profile picture if you look at it? And if so, can you also tell me what it is? What my profile picture is? I'm not, because I don't want to tell you. I want you to tell me. What is it, Samir? What is my profile picture, Samir? Can you tell me what it is? Tell me what my profile picture is, Samir. I'm waiting, Samir. What's my profile picture? Hey Yoko, welcome to the live stream. Shout out to you. Shout out to you. Yoko, tell Samir what my profile picture is. Yoko, tell Samir what my profile picture is. Yoko, tell Samir what my profile picture is. Hey Samir. Hey Samir, have you ever watched SpongeBob? Never mind, Yoko. I think you guys left because I only showed that there was one person watching. But I think it's just a glitch.
This is how you can get all these new things, all this. This you can get all these new things, all this delivery food, all this new gaming stuff, ridiculously cheap price. Now, there have been theories upon theories. Is Patrick Starr a psychopath? Is he faking his idiocy to get by? Or perhaps to make others go insane? It's something that everyone who's ever watched the show has likely considered, especially because of his random bursts of intelligence. Back in July 2016, at the end of my Plankton video, I told you all that I would eventually return to prove why Patrick is a psycho. Since then, many theories have cropped up, but truly, what is the realism in this idea? What is Patrick Starr going for? Is he legitimately unintelligent, or is he a master manipulator out to psychologically destroy everyone? Today, in honor of the single most creepy day of the entire year, I'm going to meticulously dismantle multiple instances in which he breaks from his farce in order to pinpoint exactly what his motives truly are. But perhaps he isn't actually evil. Or maybe there's another reason. Don't believe me? Think it's all just an inconsistent children's show? Follow me down this insane psychological trip, and there's a slight chance I'll have you convinced. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and Mr. Starr demonstrating his psychopathy since the beginning. The very beginning. His antics with SpongeBob never cease. SpongeBob is clearly childish. He has very little maturity and acts nothing like an adult. We see his brain on occasion, and some, including Loki myself, have even gone to theorize that in the episode where SpongeBob throws out his brain's files, that's the moment when the entire series shifts, and he goes extremely dumb. We've seen his brain in other scenarios since then, and it's since fallen to an apocalyptic state of ruin. It has kept him blissfully ignorant and stupid. Patrick, on the other hand, he's always been a bit off. In the episode known as Patrick Smartpants, we get a pretty good clue as to what may be going on with him. His brain is metaphorically shown to be unplugged until the top of the head falls off and SpongeBob accidentally replaces it with brain coral, which plugs him in and gets his gears working. Although a metaphor, his brain is shown to have cobwebs all over it, implying that it was once very active, but that it hasn't been used in a long while. And when his brain reactivates, we get a massive glimpse at what may just be Patrick's original self. Throughout the remainder of the episode, we see him taunt Sandy and Squidward, accusing them of being lower-functioning life forms, despite the fact that starfish are known to have no brain, and squids are some of the most intelligent of the deep-sea kind. Squirrels, too, are very methodical and smart. Seriously. Though while starfish have no real brain, they do have a circular nervous system around themselves. And something else that's cool, which you most likely already knew, is that some starfish can regenerate. Some can asexually reproduce when fragmented, and A while back, I made a video on SpongeBob. This was in early 2018. By the time this video is coming out, I might have sequel to that video. I don't know, I'm writing this in advance. That grand theory is basically about how SpongeBob is insane, and the proof for this lies in Squidward. When Squidward gets incredibly mad, he laughs and screams like a maniac and acts sillier than SpongeBob, which led me to believe that because SpongeBob is like that 24/7, he is in fact completely crazy. And while most of that theory revolves around discussing Squidward and his outbreaks, I never actually delved into what he's got going on. That trip to Clarinet Land, why he so simplistically snaps from little things, his narcissism, all of it. So first I'll recap all I've got on Squidward, and then we'll find out what's really going on, because something seriously is. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and recapping the SpongeBob video, Squidward is a fickle narcissist with a temper as short as Mrs. Friggin' Pop. Squidward, without a doubt, has always been this way, though SpongeBob and Patrick have amplified it. Squidward is a very immature narcissist. His outfits are forms of art, such as painting and music, but he fails at them and scoffs at the idea of him sucking. We've even seen him on a couple of occasions literally hint at suicide, most notably the time with the noose. So, he is suicidally depressed, and without two primary outlets, he'd be highly pent up inside, which he is already. He's overstressed, and his trip to Clarinet Land is incredibly symbolic of what happens when he gets hyper-anxious. It's a hallucinated panic attack due to the loss of his clarinet. We get a direct look at his thought process, so let's delve. For those who don't remember this episode, or for those who've been waiting for a theory on it for ages, I'll recap. Squidward puts his clarinet in a safe he shares with SpongeBob, and SpongeBob makes some physically impossible renovations to the safe to better organize its contents. It gets crazier and crazier, and Squidward runs through the now halls of the safe looking for clarinet. He takes some curtains, which he pulls back to reveal a land full of clarinets and a massive eagle head. The eagle tells him that this is a sacred place where clarinets roam free, and clarinets cannot be owned by someone. He then eats Squidward, and Squidward falls down, presumably through the ground, into the rest of the eagle's body. He lands in the stomach, where he finds SpongeBob, who he tackles to the ground, falling him through a hole into a square room with two mirrors. The ceiling closes up, and a couple of alternate universe Squidwards appear in his reflections and to do weird actions with the clarinet, taunting him. Squidward runs out of the room and across a clarinet bridge, which eats him and fires him into a pinball machine of SpongeBob's face, being played by Patrick. Patrick wins Squidward, and Squidward asks what on earth is going on. Patrick tells him eerily that it must be the pressure. Then everything shakes. Patrick runs, and a vacuum, presumably the pressure difference Patrick mentioned, sucks up Squidward, explodes, and it sends SpongeBob and Squidward into space. They hop off of Earth, he catches SpongeBob, and then it's revealed that the whole episode in his mind, and the pressure, being anxious of his clarinet, made him go nuts. SpongeBob approaches and reveals that he had the clarinet this whole time. Squidward, who went nuts because of just a few minutes without his precious clarinet, then flips out. So what does this all mean? Well, it's of course a panic-induced daytime nightmare, all because Squidward was missing his precious clarinet. But why fret over such a tiny item so greatly? Well, that's my theory. Along with his art, it's the only thing keeping him literally
Hey
alive.
Harry,
This
welcome
was
to the live
completely
stream. Shout
proven
out to
by
you.
this one episode. He takes a trip to his subconscious where he meets the eagle. The eagle tells him that clarinets need to be free creatures. As for what that truly means, well, that's the fun part. You see, his two tethers to his life, his tethers to being non-suicidal, have turned into his narcissistic pleasures. The dependency on has become too great, and he needs to. And he won't return to suicidal depression if he loses these things. At this point in time, he'll just go nuts. That's why this manifestation of his subconscious, this eagle, is telling him to give them up. These clarinets are like Squidward. They need to be free of this tether to life. In this world, clarinets have life, and everything else is dead, indicating to Squidward that his clarinet needs to be free of him, because maybe he needs to die, or in the least, not die while insane. Of course, this also means that the box he's trapped in while his AU doppelgangers torture him represents the fact that he has boxed himself into the fact that he cannot live without the support of a materialistic item. His clarinet's the one who's been torturing him all this time, not SpongeBob. He unfairly blames SpongeBob for his insanity, when he should only be blaming SpongeBob for the increase in depression. It's his clarinet that has done this to him, and as we see in his subconscious, he's actually terrified of it. As for his love of painting, that's another typical art form that he uses as an outlet. It's almost like his backup if something goes seriously wrong. He's not amazing at art by any means, but being told that he sucks will cause him to deny. In fact, we've legitimately seen him go through the 5 stages of grief in many episodes. Usually these stages are attributed with the acceptance of death, or in his case, giving into depression and by extension, suicide. In the Magic Conch episode, he denies working with his idiotic neighbors. Then he gets furious. Then he begins to bargain, asking the conch for something to eat. Finally, he gets tired and depressed before finally, at the end of the episode, accepting the insanity around him and giving in to the conch. Denial, we've seen it many times. People will tell him he isn't good, and he'll deny, then get angry. Then he'll try to do things to get better. Then he'll get sad and sometimes accept something in the very end. Normally, he only gets to anger, but this process has made its way through him many times, and by the end, he has a mental break. These stages are directly tied to the process of death, once again giving us immediate confirmation that art and his clarinet are what's keeping him alive. A creative and serious, legitimate, real-life psychological business that real people often deal with. And my theory of Squidward's depression borders on being fact if you simply look at him. Even in the Tiki episode, after he cries himself to sleep, he wakes up stressed about wanting peace, and then he walks outside to find the Tiki land SpongeBob and Patrick created. He thinks it's a mirage, and he admits to himself saying, "So this is what insanity's like," which is interesting. So he does know that insanity is right around the corner for him. Apparently, he's been at this point before. He then claims that he'll end up in the padded room at the Cephalopod Hall. He knows all of this, so it's hard to say that he hasn't encountered some form of insanity before. Clearly, he was administered the clarinet and art as coping mechanisms to keep him feeling fulfilled in life. So maybe he isn't a narcissist. Maybe he's just so emotionally tied to what he does, because without it, he'll be dead to himself. That's why he so angrily denies everyone who tells him he sucks, because he knows he does. And acceptance of that would mean the one thing his therapists fear most. You know, it even makes me wonder if the intelligent Patrick personalities have intentionally put the dumber ones in control more often just because of how emotionless and sadistic they are. They know Squidward's depressed. They want him to suffer because it really is Patrick who's the root cause of Squidward's increased depression, not as much as SpongeBob. The initial cause of this depression, as we've been painfully made aware, was his inability to surpass William in his schooling, the inability to become anything more than the unpopular butt of jokes. I feel that we really do see a lot of the show through Squidward's eyes. SpongeBob, of course, isn't as nuts as we think. We've seen Squidward hallucinate SpongeBob's laughing many times before. It's all Squidward projecting his internal psychotic laughing onto SpongeBob. I mean, I think we've even seen Squidward's therapist before, although I can't remember. Likely the same one who suggested these coping mechanisms, and it's very unlikely that SpongeBob and Patrick had all the resources or voice modifications to cause all of those tikis to start singing and dancing. Squidward himself admitted to giving in to the Tiki Land, and this caused the rest of it to start going crazy. That was his imagination. He didn't even detect it was fake until it literally blew up because he didn't want to think it was fake. He'd given into his insanity. He even has a breakdown when he realizes that he wasn't insane. He wanted to become insane. And then guess what? His retribution, his new form of fun, is an immature ride in which he rams into SpongeBob and Patrick, and he laughs like SpongeBob as he bathes in the immaturity I've constantly claimed he has. But all of this isn't enough, and like all of these SpongeBob episodes, looking for more times where Squidward indicates to us that his clarinet and art are his lifelines. So you guys comment all of the times you can think of when he's indicated these things, because another video will likely be coming soon. You know why? Because all of this is... You in position yet? Working on it. It's Friday the 13th again, and you all know what that means. I'm covering more SpongeBob SquarePants, the show of absolute terror. Whether it be Plankton, the attritional rapid force psychologically manipulative war mastermind of breakdown, or Patrick, who suffers from trauma-induced anxiety triggered spontaneously duplicative multi-intellectual dissociative identity disorder, paranoid schizophrenia, and chronic delusions of a mental multiverse, This show has demonstrated to me that it has a lot to unpack. So, in an attempt to use insanity to take this as far as I seriously can, today we are dissecting SpongeBob himself and how he's clinically insane. Hello, I'm the theorizer. SpongeBob SquarePants himself is a lot like Squidward tentacles, but only in the moments where Squidward acts crazy. SpongeBob is always crazy, hopping around like a maniac. Brain turned to absolute mush, etc. Squidward, however, when something goes very wrong or he simply cannot take it anymore, he freaks out, starts laughing like a crazy person, and giggling like SpongeBob. He quite literally acts exactly like SpongeBob and Patrick in his moments of pure rage and intolerance of their stupidity. No normal person acts like this 24/7, but it's understandable if someone is under extreme stress to go sort of hilariously insane. Thanks to my extensive theories, we know why Patrick does this, and we literally see in the show why Squidward sometimes does it, but SpongeBob is the only one without an origin of his carefree bliss. If you've watched the third and final part of my Patrick theory trilogy, you may have an idea of where I'm taking this. Patrick, I diagnosed with hundreds of multiplying split personalities and severely chronic delusions. As stated in my previous videos, some of this confusion and terror rubs off on the people around him, including SpongeBob. SpongeBob was silly as a child, I'm sure you can all find evidence for that, but that's normal for all kids. SpongeBob's problem is that he's not changed. His problem is that he's been driven past those occasional outbursts that Squidward has, those manic, ridiculous laughing fits he has. Sometimes, albeit rarely, Squidward is driven so far, like in the Magic Conch episode, that his eyes grow wide and he gives into the madness, like the idiot friends around him. But SpongeBob acts like this all the time. It's his mind's failsafe after giving up on sanity. Ignorant bliss. SpongeBob still has many normal moments, but when Patrick gets stupid, SpongeBob immediately snaps into this mode. Not only around Patrick, though, SpongeBob also randomly will snap into it as a part of his general personality. It's leaking through. It's become second nature for him to have these unruly snaps of ridiculousness. It's certainly nothing like what Patrick's got. Still something. SpongeBob is an immature child. It's like he's reverted to childhood by going too far with Patrick, hanging out too much, giving this mentally ill echinoderm a friend at the cost of his own sanity. SpongeBob's family doesn't second guess it. This is a problem because it means SpongeBob had a little something before he met Patrick. A crack in his mentality, a weakness for bliss. And when I say insanity, I'm not talking about him having random mental disorders. I'm talking about how he has literally disconnected himself from reality as a last-ditch effort for subliminal self-preservation. He endured a trauma, a torment, which has made him into this extremely immature adult. Then again, each character in Bikini Bottom is so far into their stereotypes that it makes me feel like something severe has happened to all of them in one fell swoop, but more on that some other time. So, as I said, something must have happened to SpongeBob at one point or another to cause this severely problematic behavior. So I'm going to prove all of this by going through a few clips, and it'll show you how Squidward and SpongeBob are frighteningly similar when it comes down to their breakdowns in mental state. In the first clip, we'll observe Squidward has just had a frustrating day dealing with SpongeBob. At the very end, SpongeBob manages to do the exact opposite of what Squidward had wanted. This final blow hit Squidward the wrong way. He broke down, being incapable of anything but a single smile, which he held for quite some time, before absolutely losing it, laughing and freaking out. But we need more evidence, more clip.
Hit that blue button to shop my outfit on the iconic sport. The sooner you do.
In this second clip from from the episode entitled Good Old What's His Name, Squidward tried to beat SpongeBob in a contest for a vacation brochure, and when his attempts resulted in his imprisonment, he started to lose it. But when Mr. Krabs reveals that the contest was actually to win the brochure itself and not the vacation, Squidward has what I shall call a mini moment. His eyes go bloodshot, and he starts giggling and chuckling with a warped face while he smiles. It's quite faint, but you can in fact see a resemblance to SpongeBob's laughable personality in this moment. However, it's other scenes where we really start to see it. In the episode called Squid's Visit, the animators sort of go all out with this whole idea. After some horrendous antics with SpongeBob, Squidward, like we've seen multiple times now, basically caves in and becomes as crazy as SpongeBob. After his house is burnt down by an overcooked casserole because he was too distracted by playing with a vacuum cleaner, he has a vision where he appears to be dining with the vacuum. It's clear at this point in the episode that he's taken too much of the inanity. After SpongeBob tells Squidward that he can stay over for the time being, Squidward's face becomes warped and dead, and then he shrinks and vanishes to a point. It is then that we are shown him at the vacuum. He has slipped from sanity. He is doing like SpongeBob preaches and using his imagination in the worst way possible. As he drinks tea with the vacuum, he offers up a casserole. Then he laughs like a maniac and zooms in on him. We then see the reality of the situation. Squidward's sentience has vacated his body. Basically, he's insane. And what goes on in his mind parallels that of SpongeBob, the use of his imagination. If it was SpongeBob doing this weird dinner thing, it's something we would all laugh at, but since it's Squidward and they play eerie music over top of it, we are certain something isn't quite right. Another good episode for proof of Squidward's similarities to SpongeBob is in the episode where he moves into a private neighborhood. He can't even go a few days without doing something immature. He literally has too much fun with a leaf blower, because deep down, he is just like his crazy neighbors. It's like he's almost putting on an act around SpongeBob and Patrick, trying to be sophisticated, when honestly, we know he isn't. Squidward has had many mental breakdowns before. He has very severe anxiety and is prone to panic attacks. He'll do anything to be better than SpongeBob, as we see many times, and he's very immature deep down. People who are truly sophisticated, like Squilliam, see how he's a poser and a fraud. He's an insane squid who tries to be better than everyone else, only to please himself. He's a narcissist who thinks he's amazing art and music. Upon being criticized, he becomes livid. In actuality, SpongeBob is far more mature than Squidward. It's very apparent because it's, as I've been saying, SpongeBob has gone permanently insane to the point where he's not aware he's even doing it. And it's so convincing. Yes. A good example of a mental breakdown is in the episode where he takes a trip to what I'll call Clarinet Land. Some would call this a drug trip or a fever dream, though he is not sick or high. He's crazy, an absolute head case. But this theory of mine is about SpongeBob. I'll do Squidward's mentality another day, very soon. Point is, these two are similar with what they find amusing, or how they see things altogether. Now, SpongeBob could very well be insane, or he could be a psychopath faking bliss and insanity. And if we're truly going in this direction, there's even a strong possibility that he could be an insane psychopath who thinks he's faking bliss and insanity. An emotionally dead psycho, so disconnected from reality that he fakes crying and emotions because he's so desperate for bliss. A psycho nuts. He thinks he's a TV show character, and he is, which makes this even further layered with intellectual psychology. Since it's even more unlikely than what I'm already spelling, though, I'll keep myself grounded. For now, many people have also noted how the show SpongeBob SquarePants got really bad and unfunny after sometime around the episode known as Squilliam Returns, where SpongeBob's little people in his mind threw out all of his knowledge in the form of files, erasing everything he knows. It's my belief that this was actually the point where he officially lost his sanity. Before this point, he was mostly just being kind to the mentally disabled Patrick, but after, he had no clue anything. His brain, I repeat, turned into pink mush. For those of you wondering, this is the main series on my channel. Coraline sort of was, but I only ultimately made about 3 theories on that. The rest were just answering your questions, which is why I'm likely going to make a whole other one sometime this year. For now, though, the dissection of the mentalities of SpongeBob characters is my main series. It may be mostly ridiculous, but I find it a ton of fun, and so do you. So I will keep doing it. In fact, you guys please go out and find more instances where Squidward goes crazy. It will help. And once you guys aid with more evidence, I'm making a follow-up theory on SpongeBob. And I've also got Squidward's and Mrs. Puff's theories coming down the pipeline. Lots of theories on television shows this year. And so, until next time, I'm the Theorizer.
Hey, do you want to save money when you shop online? You should click right here and download Honey. No. Don't click there.
Over a year ago, I made an extremely in-depth video analyzing the 1971 film Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That video is seriously going to be one of my best, but I constantly got the question, does it all apply to Tim Burton's 2005 remake? I recommend you click or tap the white box in the top right corner now to watch that original video. But basically, I talk about how it's extremely likely that Willy Wonka spied on each kid and only opened the factory to punish the poor and save. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and after the recent passing of Gene Wilder, I was lured back to watching Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Not the Tim Burton 2005 one, I'm talking the original classic derived from Roald Dahl's book. I have always looked at this film and wondered, what exactly goes through his head as all of the children are altered and hurt around him? I sort of diagnosed him with bipolar, but I now see that I needed more attributes for an accurate diagnosis. And while this theory still remains as one of the robot-voiced, suddenly popular analyses of my channel, there's clearly more to this mystical misfit, his plan. What exactly is it? And by that, I mean the parts we aren't told. And I'm not going to accept the theory that the children are made into chocolate. That's a bit ridiculous even for me. What I will do, though, is summarize his plans into a huge list to organize what this madman has on his agenda. But first, we need to address a very interesting point. Granted, many people have noticed this point over the years, and you've probably heard of it yourself. After Augustus Gloop is taken by the pipe, the boat has just barely enough seats for the people left. No room for Augustus and his mother. Same goes for the Wonka Wash. Barely enough seats for the 5 people left. Elevator? Definitely no space for all 11 people. So did Willy Wonka actually know that the kids were going to disappear? Well, if you still didn't know, yes, he did. We are told that his plan was to bring kids to his factory to turn the kindest one to a master chocolatier and grant them his factory. He had an employee posed as Slugworth, a competing chocolatier. This phony Slugworth was to ask each ticket receiver for an everlasting gobstopper. The child who was nicest and didn't give it to Slugworth was awarded a factory. And the children who were selfish were taught a lesson about their rudeness, and their parents were taught to become more strict. Fairly standard plan. He is doing as the saying goes, and is killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only does he help bratty kids and parents become kind and strict, but he finds a perfect person to give his factory to. Although, you know, if you're dealing with me, you'll be guaranteed that there's more to it. And I will repeat myself, I don't believe he is turning kids into chocolate like other people have said. He just isn't that kind of person. He even admits that they'll be alright, and he wouldn't have taught them all a lesson just to kill them. But I have a different idea, a more intricate and possibly even creepy idea. Let's figure out his whole plan. Let's start with the Slugworth imposter. What exactly is his purpose? Well, that's obvious. It was stated that he was there to test each kid's loyalty to Wonka, their generosity, willpower, and kindness. All that sweet stuff. But what I'm asking is, what's his real purpose? What else does he do? We see that in the chocolate factory, there's lots of chocolate, clearly, but there's also many rooms that have absolutely nothing to do with chocolate and simply don't fit at all. They're very oddly specific to each kid, and out of the likely tens to hundreds of rooms in the factory, he takes them to those few in particular. It's clear he knows what will occur. He takes Augustus to a room entirely composed of edible sweets, takes Violet to a room where he's developing amazing gum, takes Veruca to an irresistible room where she'll want it all, and takes Mike to a room that has entirely to do with televisions. How inexplicably bizarre. This is crazy. How does Wonka know what each kid wants? Sure, you could argue that he looked at them all when they entered and took them to rooms specific to their stereotype, but it's far too strange to have rooms like those in the first place. He allows them to roam free, all by themselves, but it's clear he knows what will happen. So how does he know what each kid wants before they even get there? Well, what we need to assume next makes everything slightly chilling. Here's my theory. You might find this obvious, or perhaps it will blow your mind. Maybe it'll keep you neutral. I don't know. But I'm fairly certain that Willy Wonka was spying on these kids. Hear me out. We'll call this man Mr. Wilkinson, as that is his real name. Wilkinson suddenly appears right after each kid wins. He is doing something nearby, right before he approaches them. He was eating at the same restaurant as Augustus Gloop, right as he found the golden ticket. He brings in a box of candy bars to the salted peanuts factory, which ultimately leads to Veruca's victory. Hey, see what I did there? Salted? Okay, I apologize for my horrible contribution to society. But what is more is that he casually washes the car behind Violet Beauregard right after she wins, and he is standing right near Mike TV, posing as a reporter as Mike wins. He was there to assure these brats victories. He spies on the most bratty of brats approved by Wonka and gives them tickets. Probability itself makes the whole thing improbable. 4 rude kids, all similar. This is out of the world's billions of people, so all of the winners being kids lowers chances greatly. The fact that they are all this rude and cruel also lowers the chances of the tickets actually being random. The world thought that all of this was random and that they could have won, but in reality, they had no chance. It was rigged. I mean, look at this man. He created a probability machine that would tell him the exact location of the tickets, but it didn't tell him the truth. What a peculiar thing to include, filmmakers. Now to Charlie, where things get difficult. How does Charlie receive a winning bar? Charlie finds a coin in a drain and buys a chocolate bar with it. He's about to leave, but then decides to go back and purchase another. This second purchase is the chocolate bar containing the golden ticket. How was it assured that Charlie received a ticket here? Wilkinson. We see him one scene later, indicating that, like the rest, he was really there. He monitored the winning chocolate bar, assuring Charlie's victory. Also, notice how the Candyman talks about hiding tickets, and then immediately goes to grab a chocolate bar of his own choice. And being a Candyman, he'd have direct affiliation with the factory down the street, or in the least, Slugworth. And the way that this shot lingers on the Candyman after Charlie leaves, showing him continue to look at him, so sneaky. But the big question is why? Why Charlie, a nice boy compared to all of the vicious and brutal kids? Something massive to consider is the timing. The craziest thing in the whole movie is the timing. Wonka opens his factory only a few days after Charlie longs for its insides. How strange. How perfectly specific. Wonka also says how he needs a successor, someone to take on the factory after he passes away. So compiling all of this together, we have our answer. Needing a successor, Wonka sent out Wilkinson to find the perfect child. Charlie, a poor boy that lived down the street, was a perfect fit for a successor. Pure, innocent, kind, fun, chocolate-loving, and perfect for the job. So to keep suspicion down regarding a single boy, Wonka continues to invite 4 more kids into the factory in hopes that Charlie would pass his tests and the rest would flounder. Wilkinson finds 4 of the most bratty kids in the world, 4 kids that could any day lose to Charlie in a contest of kindness, loyalty, and most importantly, selflessness.
Your spring collection became the hottest thing when Fiverr freelancers made a marketing campaign. They built your unique landing page.
Wonka creates objects and rooms specific to each of the 4 brats to further ensure that they will indeed fall for the traps. Notice how there's no room specific to Charlie, no room at all. And if you're going to say, oh, but what about the bubble room? Well, the bubble room wasn't intended to trick Charlie. It was a test, not a child trap. Wonka just passes right through that bubble room. This is completely the opposite from what he does in the other rooms. He waits there and waits and waits until the kid that room is designed for engages in their terrible actions. And this teaches them and their parents a thing or two about selflessness and parenting. Also, Wonka repeatedly acts strange around Charlie, almost like he's a secondary character to him. He makes him sign the contract last. He pauses and waits to give Charlie a gobstopper last.
One for you, and one for you, and one for you.
Yeah, what about Charlie?
And one for Charlie.
And he speaks slightly differently to him. He always keeps him at the end of the line and away from the spotlight of the other kids. The bubble room is a strategically placed test. It was a room he knew Charlie would use, which would break the contract. And this would force Charlie into the final position of giving up the gobstopper or not. A final test passed. Notice how Wonka just assumes that they used the bubble room. The Golden Goose Seed couldn't have had any idea that they even used the room, and he just acts like they never left the group. How odd. And when Charlie wins, he says he knew Charlie would. 4 bratty kids, 1 kind kid, such odd probabilities. Wilkinson, the Slugworth imposter, the contract, rehearsed songs, minimal vehicle space, strategically placed bubble room, oddly large pipes fit for a fatty, lingering shots, timing, chronically apathetic tour guide, intelligent mastermind, succession, extremist parenting tips, all of it. This whole thing was to get Charlie to win. He even says at the end how he's sorry for putting him through all of it. I'm not too sure if all of you think this is obvious or not, but I think it's pretty cool. I'm doing this to hopefully put an end to many questions people still have. I suppose this video was just more or less to display as much evidence as I could to show why this almost certainly is the case, and I hope you at least a little bit enjoyed this in-depth analysis of logic, shots, and timing. So, in summarization, Wonka was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. First bird, saving the futures of these brats by teaching them and their parents lessons. Second bird, saving a poor boy by turning his life upside down. And third bird, a successor. Wonka needed a replacement, and via an extensive process, he succeeded in helping the lives of many people. Brilliant. I hope you learned something, and until next time, I'm the Theorizer.
Hit that button to shut my app on the iconic Squid. The sooner you do this.
Over a year ago, I made an extremely in-depth video analyzing the 1971 film Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That video is seriously going to be one of my best, but I constantly got the question, does it all apply to Tim Burton's 2005 remake? I recommend you click or tap the white box in the top right corner now to watch that original video. But basically, I talk about how it's extremely likely that Willy Wonka spied on each kid and opened the factory, punished the 4, and saved Charlie from poverty. I give a flooding pile of evidence, and most of it revolves around the fake Slugworth, Mr. Wilkinson. But Tim Burton's version didn't have Mr. Wilkinson in it. Guess what, though? It doesn't matter. Because, like me, it seems as though Tim Burton cracked the code of that 1971 movie. Tim's movie is a lot more like the book. At first, I thought his version wouldn't share this so-called conspiracy, as it was these specific 1971 filmmakers who hid this underlying story in film. They have nothing to do with Burton, therefore his film shouldn't have the same conspiracy. But it's actually blatantly obvious that Burton saw the same truth I saw because his film revels in these secrets. If you don't believe me, I'd laugh at you, because I have the most obvious, blatant evidence right here. Let's blast into this. Hello, I'm the theorizer. If it's true that Tim Burton questioned 1971 Wonka's motives and mystery, then it means Burton is simultaneously mocking the first film's plot holes and simultaneously realizing that they aren't plot holes, but are in fact all a part of the conspiracy. I'll give you one more chance to watch my other Wonka video. Good? Let's do this thing. Felicity Dahl is the widowed wife of Roald Dahl. She was married to him for many years up until his death in 1990, and she executively produced this movie. I think I know why. Roald Dahl and many of his fans were quite vocal about the 1971 Wonka film. They hated it. They said it deviated too far from the book and its meaning. This is true. That old movie did deviate quite a bit. It was for movie length and there were technical limitations and whatnot. So for Felicity Dahl, the one person who knew most about Roald to produce this movie, makes sense. She's doing it to keep the story in check and to oversee the whole project so that they stick to the book. In interviews, she talks about how Roald would have loved the 2005 version, and she feels that Depp and Burton were best for the job. If any conspiracy were to cross over, it would be her doing or Tim's. One of the largest changes the 1971 version made to the book was the Golden Goose room. It isn't in the book. In the book, it's a room full of squirrels that crack open nuts. And think about it. Veruca's dad owns a nut-shelling company. It's her perfect fate. All the others got their comeuppance too. Augustus nearly drowned in what he loved. Violet nearly blew up from what she loved. And Mike was physically destroyed from what he loved. But golden geese have nothing to do with Veruca, other than the fact that they're golden and she might like it. But the nuts, that's a perfect fate for both her and her father. But how can we be totally sure that this version of Wonka was as prepared as the last? Well, first of all, everything I said in the last video still seems to apply here, so I've already cut around 10 minutes of evidence sitting there in that other video. But once again, the big magenta dragon boat only has enough seats for the remaining guests. No room for Augustus and Mrs. Gloop, indicating that Wonka knew they'd be left in the chocolate room. And something else Wonka does is he stares at things for a few seconds at a time, like he's pondering what's about to happen, and he knows who the next kid's going to be. They hop onto the boat, and the camera focuses in on him one last second as he ponders in preparation. And once again, like the last film, each room he goes into, he refuses to leave until the kid that room is designed for falls for the trap so that they and their parents learn the lesson. But hold on, take a look at the elevator. Wonka says he's surprised he forgot about it earlier because it's the fastest way around the factory. How does he just so happen to forget about his primary mode of transportation? He uses it to fly all around the city, even after the tour is over. No, it's because there's only room for the people left in the group. Even in the TV room, there's barely enough goggles for everyone left. Like this room was designed to be the end of the tour. The Oompa Loompas were just waiting there, and when everyone leaves, they just shut off the lights and leave with them. What? Wonka even asks how many kids are left, eerie sounding in itself, but what a weird thing to ask since he already knew there's a single kid left. All of this is because, like the 71 film, each kid has a room specially designed for them. Chocolate, nuts and squirrels, chewing gum, and television. Proof he spied on them. Many of you mentioned how he could have just seen them on TV and based the rooms off of their stereotypes, but no one, not even a team of Oompa Loompas, can create an entire chocolate room, an entire gum machine, television room, and a squirrel nut factory in a matter of a few days. Ridiculous. All of the tickets were designed to be sent out to each specific kid. Violet and Augustus were gluttonous, Veruca was greedy, and Mike was wrathful, and these means it was easy to slip a ticket right to them. Specific boxes, specifically sent to specific places. As Willy Wonka says, Mike is the little devil who cracked the system, because apparently Wonka sent out these tickets according to an algorithm to get them to specific places. Charlie would be the easiest to get a candy bar to, and the others are just algorithmic. Mike and his calculations of figuring out that algorithm literally put him into the trap Wonka wanted. If all of this isn't a dead giveaway, that he planned this for each kid, I don't know what is. Why else we need an algorithm of where to send the tickets? And before I get into the real evidence, The statistical odds are staggering. All of the people who find the tickets are children, aside from Mr. Salt, who publicly stated he was finding it for his daughter. And then there was that one Russian person who faked a ticket. There's no way of testing if it's fake. How would they know? Unless it was Wonka who revealed otherwise. And the only way he'd know is if he directly knew where he was sending each ticket. As I just said, the odds are staggering. 4 brats and 1 kind child, as opposed to a mixed bag of normal kids. It makes virtually no sense whatsoever. Speaking of which, the Charlie in this movie is a saint in comparison to the last movie's Charlie. 1971 Charlie, he used the bubble room, and he was in fact selfish to a degree. This one is not. And do you know what? The 1971 movie had the fizzy lifting drink scene. The book didn't, because it made Charlie look a bit selfish and not like a saint. This is clearly not what Roald Dahl wanted, because like the book, the 2005 film omits the fizzy lifting drink scene. They did this because they really need to make the distinction that Charlie is 100% good and the others are 100% bad, because it shows Wonka's plan, how he's doing as much as he can to help Charlie win. This 2005 film is so faithful to the book that it portrays Oompa Loompas as they were written before the final draft of the book. They were written as African pygmies with dark hair, and basically exactly what the 2005 movie shows them as. The book ultimately changed its description because it might have shown comparisons to slavery, but you can see just how far Burton is willing.
This is a HelloFresh box with everything you need to turn these ingredients
To go. But all this evidence is nothing without the stuff I promised. Tim Burton's blatant evidence. The stuff he really wants us to see. Things in the script that Wonka says it does. First of all, they head into the chocolate room. Augustus blasts up the pipe, and the Oompa Loompas sing their song. Wonka asks everyone, weren't they just delightful? And Mr. Salt says how it all seemed rehearsed. Mike then says it was like they knew it was all going to happen.
Aren't they delightful? Aren't they charming?
I did say that all seemed rather rehearsed.
That they knew it was gonna happen.
Oh, popcock. Wonka's only response is popcock, which is said sarcastically, and this was all literally written in there by Tim Burton and his team, that the Oompa Loompas were prepared for this, and the pipe just so happened to go down right after Wonka explained what it does, and then after Augustus fell in. Kind of shifting. Also, if that evidence was not enough to really push this, there's so much more. A lot of it is seen during Veruca Salt's demise. Wonka says, no, don't do that, like once, but doesn't really try to stop her as she runs down for the squirrels. He stands there. Then when they attack her, he fumbles for his keys, unable to find the right one as he chuckles. Like, really? Then they throw her down the garbage chute, and the Oompa Loompas start to sing their song. Then Wonka does one of those serious stares I mentioned. He does it right at Mr. Salt as he puts the correct key in and opens the gate for him. So, he knew the right key the whole time. Proof! I don't know how much more I can give. Wonka then says they only light the incinerator on Tuesdays, but the day was Tuesday. This ultimately prompted Mr. Salt to go down there and find her. Wonka said all he has to do is reach in and pull Veruca out. No. It's a huge, deep chute. How could he reach in and pull her out? Just listen to Veruca scream as she falls. It's all a plot to get him down there so that he too will fall in. Then the trained squirrel kicks him in without testing to see if he's a bad nut. Suddenly, Wonka receives news that the incinerator has been broken, and that there just so happens to be weeks worth of garbage to break their fall. This all seems undoubtedly planned, but there's still tons more. 1971 Wonka. This Wonka takes zero investment in the kids, except for Charlie, who he is constantly kind to, giving him lots of chocolate, sitting next to him on the boat, and taking an invested interest in him right off the bat before he really meets any of them. I don't think Charlie was on TV, so there's no way he could know anything about him unless he spied and already knew. He insults all of the brats, tells them he doesn't care, constantly insults them being kids, calls Veruca a wart and grips his gloves around her, says he doesn't want to learn their names because it doesn't matter, and he calls Mike a mumbler whenever he mentions how Wonka's whole tour seems staged or how it makes no sense. Wonka continues to cut Mike off, as the smart Mike knows this is all too weird, but Wonka tries to hide it. It's like he brought all the kids, but unwillingly. He's putting up with his weird plan to help their parents. Speaking of which, why does he so desperately want to put up with all of them just to give Charlie his factory? Well, first of all, he doesn't want to come off as suspicious by just randomly giving a young boy his factory. After Violet's song, Charlie asks Wonka why he let in 5 kids at this specific time. However, Wonka is strangely cut off by someone else. But later on in the movie is one of the most suspicious pieces of evidence yet. Wonka tells Charlie how he was getting old and how he needed to find an heir. He then tells Charlie to his face that he'd found an heir. Charlie himself. Charlie delightfully says,
That's why you sent out the golden tickets.
Then Wonka pauses with a look of worry on his face and says, as if to continue to lower suspicion regarding the little boy he clearly spied on. It's all about Charlie. It was always about Charlie. It all happened right around Charlie's birthday when he gets chocolate. The Candyman downtown was most likely in on it too. Wonka fired all of his staff. That doesn't mean he cuts off communication with the people he supplies. And how random that Charlie finds a bit of money just sitting there, planted in the snow, sticking out, just sitting there waiting for him while he's nearby the chocolate bar supplier. Why would Wonka put a golden ticket in his own town as well? It all makes sense by this theory. And to lower suspicion, all that, is just the first reason he's putting up with the kids, to lower that suspicion, and in the process, teach all the kids' parents a lesson. That was my point in my first theory. And now we see it does indeed apply to this 2005 film as well. But this movie has an addition that changes everything. Dr. Wilbur Wonka. And so, I believe the second reason he's putting up with all these kids, the reason he feels so deeply that he needs to teach their parents a lesson, is because of his misguided childhood trauma. Wilbur wasn't in the book. He was a character that Burton, Felicity, and the gang seemed to think was a requirement. But why? Why add this character and give Wonka a backstory? In my personal opinion, they needed to give him a reason for all of this. All of these clear lessons he's teaching the parents. He's only doing it to compensate for what he feels he never had, a good parent. In fact, his whole life has been one big attempt at growing up too fast. He tells all the kids that they're short, and that he was never that short, because he always wore a tall top hat to keep him large and in charge. His factory has rooms where he makes whipped cream, despite the fact that whipping a cow does not make whipped cream. He has whole rooms dedicated to things that aren't even chocolate, like hair cream and, oh god, the inventing room. Look at this factory. No chocolate factory in the world is this big. According to the movie, it's 50 times larger than any other factory in the world. I propose it's because Wonka doesn't just make chocolate. He's not just a chocolatier. I guarantee that he owns a ton of companies. After all, he makes hair growth chemicals and some of the most non-chocolate things that a chocolate brand couldn't successfully sell. After all, in stores, Wonka only ever sells candy and chocolate. He's never sold anything like this before, despite having these rooms for some time. This leads me to believe that he owns some of the world's largest companies, and he's been operating them in complete secrecy for years. That could be one of the reasons why he closed the factory, for the sake of secrecy. But here's some food for thought. If Wonka truly does own and operate other companies in secrecy, do you think Wonka actually ran the very chocolatiers he was up against? Without any of the employees knowing, Wonka owned the companies of Slugworth and the other people who stole recipes. Those lower functioning spies had no idea of what was all going on. There was no stealing going on. It was all owned by him. And at this point, We know he's not above fabricating all of this. After all, he fabricated a whole tour just to help Charlie inconspicuously. Even when he closes his factory, it's done drastically, suddenly enforced, and it almost feels like he's acting when he apologizes for laying off his workers. Also, notice how all the companies who were against Wonka closed down after he shut his doors. Now, this could be because of their lack of new stolen recipes. They still had chocolate they could keep selling. No, I think it's because Wonka no longer needed them for his plan to shut down his factory without suspicion. See? Like with Charlie, as I said, he fabricates whole things just to lower suspicion. And we know he's the kind of person to dive after money and keep it under wraps. Look no further than the fact that his whole golden ticket scheme probably made him upwards of tens of millions of dollars, firing the staff to lower suspicion. Lower suspicion of the companies he owned, and lower suspicion of his grand plan to find an heir and compensate for the childhood he never had by bringing in bad parents and showing them how bad they really are. Mr. Wilkinson poses as Slugworth in the 1971 movie because he is Slugworth, the fake owner of an always fake company, working under Wonka all these years. Even in this 2005 film, we very briefly see all three of the evil competitors, and their candy stores are all lined up as if each section of this larger building was bought up by the same person. That's a terrible marketing strategy, unless it's all owned by the same company. Slugworth makes a strangely over-the-top evil smile to his spy, almost as to convince his spies that he truly is against Wonka. It all fits together. It all clicks in place. Boom. Mind blown. Jeez, this is all a very interesting idea. It wraps up a couple of plot holes here and there. It adds volumes to my theorizing, and it puts a whole new sociopathic shade on.
300 for that, and 2,000 for this, way too expensive. But today I'm going to show you guys how to get all this stuff for a lot cheaper. Okay, so first, go to one of your favorite gaming websites. Select the products you want, then click the Honey browser extension.
Wonka. If Charlie grew up in the factory during his teen years, it's no wonder he became Norman Bates, LMAO, I'm joking. But these shady LMAOs, they roll in their little dragon boat and sit there laughing creepily. Wonka says it's been too many cocoa beans. I say they have knowledge of what's to come for these kids. I mean, it's one thing for Wonka to know everything about the kids and their habits, but for these songs to not be rehearsed, it's idiotic to say that. They must be rehearsed. The Oompa Loompas have no other way of knowing. They have not met the kids. And if you don't think Tim Burton would think of all this and think of it being rehearsed, as I said, Mike questions if it's rehearsed. Even after Augustus's song, Charlie asks how they know everything, and Wonka cuts him off, claiming it to be improv. And Mike says it quite clearly was not improv. Wonka cuts him off too, and calls him a mumbler again. Even later, Mike asks why Wonka makes gum if he hates it. Wonka calls him a mumbler. I can definitively say that he made that gum for Violet. Quite ironic, actually, since she turns a shade of blue after, and her name is Violet. Oh, and she's just barely the right size to fit through this hole in the wall. How coincidental. Also, Wonka somehow knows that Charlie is starving and poor. Not only does he say it, but he keeps feeding him chocolate while he's in the factory. And other than the food room, he doesn't really feed anyone else. The only way for him to know that Charlie is completely starved and poor is by, you guessed it, spying on him. And my final observation is regarding Mike. Wonka takes the elevator to a bunch of rooms that Mike will find pointless because he's waiting for Mike to pick a room. And Mike picks the TV room, of course. While in there, Mike jumps up into the teleporter and the Oompa Loompa in charge of the energy gun shoots him, despite knowing full well that it's Mike. There's my last bit of proof to prove my now undebunkable theory. Oh, I love this tale. It's got everything. Multiple times during the behind-the-scenes special, the writers and producers say their movie has a deeper meaning. What? A deeper emotional meaning? Just makes you wonder how far they're willing to go. It is Tim Burton after all. But for me, the damn mind blow struck when Felicity Dawes said Wonka was testing Charlie and the kids. So does this prove my theories? Maybe. I have many secrets myself on this channel, my second channel, and third channel. For instance, if you're an observant viewer, you might have noticed that I uploaded this video 1 day and 1 hour after Wonka's factory opened 13 years ago.
Don't push my button.
Your spring collection became the hottest thing when Fiverr freelancers made a marketing campaign. They built.
Spoiler alert, this video may contain plot points from the 1939 movie The Wizard of Oz. Those who have been living under a rock for 100 years, you have been warned. Watch at your own risk. Regardless of my bad comedic principle, though, it's been a while since I've touched this movie, but believe me, I did make my mark on it. And so, I'm going to revise my theory on it. If you don't know, a revised theory is where I take one of my much older theory videos and I really improve upon it in every way that I can. And this one's getting redone because of the water voice in the background, which has held people back from it, and the tiny plot holes I left in it. Ever since I made it, I felt the need to improve on it. So let's do this. Hello, I'm the theorizer. Let's start the revision by, like always, re-explaining my old theory. And believe me, it's a good one. Although it does take some considerably large leaps. Is Oz a real place, or is it all Dorothy's dream? At first glance, her trip is widely considered to be a dream. I mean, come on. There's magic, she gets knocked out by the window, Oz has parallel characters to her friends back home, she wakes up on a bed, and the flying house isn't ripped apart by the F5 tornado. So right off the bat, bored completely. All of the Kansas characters have doppelgangers in Oz, right? The three men back on our farm are found as the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion. Each doppelganger pair are played by the same actors, and both characters each have similar traits. Professor Marvel is the Wizard of Oz, same actor and the same character traits. Our mean neighbor is the Wicked Witch of the West, but there's only one person other than Dorothy who doesn't have a parallel, and that would be Auntie M. You could easily argue that Glinda the Good Witch is her parallel, except she isn't. She doesn't fit the pattern. Auntie M and Glinda are played by different actresses. Their traits slightly differ as well. Some believe that the reason Glinda was played by a different actress was because the producers wanted someone younger, but here's the thing. Glinda's actress wasn't even a decade younger than Auntie M's, and the kicker is the difference in their characters. The closest character M could be is the dead witch beneath the house, and of course Dorothy is the one doing the traveling and wouldn't have a parallel. Know why? Well, I'll come back to that. We need to quickly address something else, though. Coraline, the Wizard of Oz, and Alice in Wonderland. I constantly compare these three movies and have dissected them so in-depthly that it was hard for me not to notice something so striking. Each story is sort of based off of the other. They all star an independent, young, female protagonist who travels to a magical and fantastical world where they meet characters who are identical to their friends back home. All three stories leave the audience wondering whether the whole trip was a dream or not. In the parallel world, things start off as magical and amazing, but slowly get more and more dire and spooky. There's always a lovely old mentor woman that loves the main character, but she's revealed to be a lying, manipulative, antagonistic old ruler of the whole land that has a nasty vested interest in the protagonist they were waiting for to come. In Alice in Wonderland, this old hag would be the Queen of Hearts. In Coraline, this would be the Beldam. But in The Wizard of Oz, well, we don't know. We need someone who starts off nice, but slowly begins to manipulate, lie, and get things real dire at the end. They must be female and significantly older than the female protagonist. They must be the primary ruler of the world as well. One would immediately jump to say that it's the Wicked Witch of the West, of course, but here's just the thing. She has a parallel back home, the neighbor. And thus, she isn't a real character that lives in this world. She is a doppelganger who was created. Look at how she melts because of water, like a wax creation of some sort. How am I the first to notice this? And notice how the mean green nutcase never lies to Dorothy like the pattern states. She never mentors her, she's always evil right from the get-go. She didn't expect Dorothy to arrive either, but do you know who did? Glinda. If Glinda follows the pattern, and she does, then she should be the true villain. And she is. In Coraline and Alice in Wonderland, who starts as the kind older woman, but lies? The future antagonist. Who doesn't have a real parallel back home? The future antagonist. This is escalating in the creep factor by the second. In The Wizard of Oz, who forces Dorothy to go on a quest to find a useless wizard to only reveal the truth of the slippers later, after Dorothy nearly died? Who lied about all of this? Glinda. Who has magic that can bring a house in one piece through an F5 tornado? Glinda. Who could have created the doppelgangers of Dorothy's friends by spying on her? Glinda. And who shows up right after Dorothy's house somehow lands directly on one of the villains? Glinda. She's one nasty So why forcefully bring Dorothy to Oz? The big thing we're missing here is the motives and the plan. Why bring Dorothy? To let the Wicked Witch kill her? Then why'd she let Dorothy return home at the end? What is it with Glinda and Dorothy? And here's the conspiracy bomb I have planted. Glinda let Dorothy go, sure, but only after Dorothy systematically took out Oz's other three rulers, the Wizard, the Western Witch, and the Eastern Witch, leaving Glinda as the only one left. The secretly nasty, evil ruler of Oz, taking out the other three to leave her as the true ruler. But why? I get Dorothy to do it instead. Well, Dorothy is the perfect independent female heroine for the job. And if someone else does Glinda's dirty work, her nice, pretty, non-sinister image will be kept in the eyes of the Munchkins, the only real inhabitants of Oz, who are only terrified by the evil witch who attacked them. The good witch swoops in, saves the day, and nicely sends the heroine home. She's fit for the ruler in their eyes. She's also rather careless and cruel. She desecrates the Eastern witch's body by shriveling up her legs. She then taunts the Western witch about her sister's death and begins to condescendingly make fun of her. But then later in the movie, take a look at this. Simply notice how odd it is that the wizard leaves in an uncontrollable hot air balloon. He just floats up and away, out of control. It's so bizarre. And we see that the Tin Man was the one who let the rope go, letting the balloon just fly away. And that really makes no sense. He knows what he's doing. Dorothy has literally just jumped out of the balloon, and the Tin Man unties the rope from its post and lets it go. Just like that. It's so weird. There is no explanation, unless he's a villain of some sort, or someone is forcing him to do it. And the only magical person left in all of Oz who could control him would be Glinda. And this is besides the fact that he is likely her creation anyways, so naturally he'd be obedient. But then Glinda shows up one scene later. She was right nearby the whole time, so we know that she'd have a part in all of this. Need I remind you that after the wizard gets into the air and Dorothy asks him to come down, he says he doesn't know how the balloon works? Really? Then why the heck does he have one? Let alone, why would he plan to take it up in the first place? Either he's a pure idiot, he's villainous, or he's obeying someone else. And guess what happens? Yep, Glinda shows up right after. Such a nasty woman. Her plastered-on face is so frightening now, not that it wasn't before. I mean, just look at it. She looks like a foundation fondue. Good God, woman, you look like a Fisher-Price toy. But I still hear you saying, Dorothy woke up in her bed. How could she have taken a trip? And to that I say, she didn't. It wasn't a dream. She did actually go there, but not physically. Oz is a place, a real one, and it was her spirit, not body, that traveled there. It's still a very real, very heinous land. But why the doppelganger friends? Why would Glinda assume their significance? Well, they were intentionally put there to aid Dorothy on her quest. Notice how bizarre it is that Dorothy walks down a perfectly set road and right past the three people that she just happens to know from home. They are there to further subliminally reassure her to take out Glinda's other creations. They are there to push Dorothy to fight for something other than herself, to really force her into doing things like finding the wizard and killing the witch, to let the Munchkins see Glinda as a fitting ruler. This manipulative maniac. She seems very adamant about becoming a ruler. I mean, just look at her flamboyant crown. That thing could reflect gamma rays. And the Green Witch dies from melting due to water, sure. But even though she's fake, that water shouldn't be enough to melt her. I think Glinda aided with that a little bit. And finally, the reason Dorothy does not have a doppelganger. She is the only one who is traveling to this world. She's the one Glinda needs to do her tasks. She's the only person without a parallel, meaning this so-called parallel world has an anomaly. Something rather strange, don't you think? Well, it isn't strange when you consider my theory. And because I'm sure there will be plenty of skeptics. have so much more evidence that Glinda is the villain, trying to manipulate the Munchkins. Back when we first meet Glinda, we see something odd right off the bat. She steals the Eastern Witch's shoes and then puts them on Dorothy's feet. But when the Western Witch arrives and wants the slippers, Glinda has put protection on them. The witch can't steal them. And this is all the stuff we see happen. But then, when the witch gets angry and says she wants them, Glinda tells Dorothy,
"Keep tight inside of them. Their magic must be very powerful, or she wouldn't want them so bad."
she's acting like she doesn't know what the shoes are capable of, right after she has stolen them and put them on Dorothy. And then at the end, she also reveals what they do. So why play it up like this? Why act so blissfully ignorant? Skipping ahead to the death of Greenie, the witch says something odd as well.
Quality writing makes your schoolwork better and helps you stand out in the process. Meet Emily, the digital writing assistant that helps students create a...
She says,
"You fucking rat! Look what you've done! I'm melting! Melting! Oh, what a world! What a world! Who thought a good little girl like you could destroy my beautiful wickedness?
it's almost like she's acting up, trying to melt. And I mean, duh, of course she's acting. It's a movie. But that's not what I mean. The woman who plays the Wicked Witch West, she changes her movie. And she never changed her acting style anywhere else in the whole movie, just when she's playing. And it isn't her acting either. It's the way you how odd. Skipping ahead to we see another strange thing. When the Tin Man asks Glinda why she didn't tell Dorothy about the slippers earlier, Glinda's excuse this whole time is that she wanted to teach Dorothy a lesson. And what was that lesson? It was not to stray far away from your home, to not wish to go over the rainbow, not find it at all. Although this so-called lesson she taught her does have a certain effect, as if she's implying that Dorothy dare not return to Oz. Creepy. But hold up. Glinda said that she was trying to teach Dorothy a lesson. Two things. One, how the heck would Glinda know that Dorothy needed to learn anything unless she'd been spying on her? And two, what if Dorothy hadn't come here at all? Glinda withholds the slippers from her to teach her a lesson, but none of this makes sense. It just doesn't even come close to adding up. The only two explanations for any of this is one, that it's a dream, or two, it's everything I've been saying it is. And with the countless new chunks of evidence I've been presenting for the past 10 minutes, it's now more likely than not to be a real trip. I also have more on Glinda's lies. She says whenever she suddenly appears, it is because she was called by the Munchkins. Okay. So first of all, how the heck do they call her? And two, that's a blatant lie. The final time she appears is right when the balloon flies away, but nobody could have called her in that short time. No Munchkin calls her. They all stay right there watching the balloon. Yet she shows up directly after it floats off. She was there the whole time, and she's a liar. And I have one final huge piece of evidence that it was Glinda who brought Dorothy here. When Dorothy is using the shoes to warp home, Glinda waves her wand over Dorothy's head. It isn't the shoes at all. Glinda is using them as a distraction. Look at her wand in this clip and tell me that she isn't the one teleporting Dorothy. And you know what this means? She's also the one who brought her in the first place. And why is she pinning her magic on the shoes? Once again, to convince the Munchkins of her queenliness. I don't know how much more I need to give to convince you. Just take one good look at Oz after this video, and you'll see just how surreal and ridiculously over the top certain aspects are. And it's not due to the way it was shot, directed, or written. It's because of the underlying plot. So that is my extensive, sort of, maybe a little bit out there take on The Wizard of Oz. I know tons of people question my mindset when I theorize on almost 80-year-old movies. Well, everyone's seen them, so everyone can relate to my ideas. I hope you enjoyed this theory of mine. I sure do. Why not check out my other channels, one where I game, and one where I tell an intricate story that needs to be pieced together. Until next time,
I'm Glinda!
This is the HelloFresh box with everything you need to turn these ingredients into easy, fresh.
Alice in Wonderland is perhaps one of the best classic stories of all time. From a tale to a book to a Disney film to a Tim Burton film, there's no denying its amazing popularity. The strangeness and surreality of this whole story is just odd, and many have theorized on it. They theorize that the whole trip to Wonderland is just the effect of drugs, and they theorize that it's all a dream of a very outlandish girl. But with Tim Burton's sequel being released in a few weeks, I'm going to give my take on the truth of this story, specifically the Tim Burton version. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Coraline, the Wizard of Oz, and Alice in Wonderland all share extraordinary similarities. They all star an adventurous, independent female protagonist who travels to a parallel and magical world where they find doppelgangers of their friends and family. The whole trip is left ambiguous as to whether or not it was a dream or not. I've already done The Wizard of Oz, the third best theory I've ever made in my opinion. I dig into the conspiracy of Oz. And as far as Coraline goes, well, I've really worked at it, creating 3 theories, being a part secret of the other world, with an absolutely amazing 4th theory coming this Halloween. But the one I've left out until now is Alice in Wonderland. And my question is, yet again, is it all a dream? The Tim Burton version. Let's take a look at Alice's psyche. She stands out among her peers as ridiculous and a bit of an anti-conformist. As a girl, she takes trips in her dreams to a place she calls Wonderland. As a woman, she is stuck between a rock and a hard place and falls into a hole, later claiming that she hit her head. But the thing is, Wonderland isn't Wonderland at all. It's actually known as Underland. And so far, lots of evidence states it's a dream. She travels to this place in her sleep as a girl, she hits her head in a hole, and the whole thing is a mental trip for her mind's self-preservation during a midlife crisis. She meets several creatures in Wonderland who directly parallel her friends back home, and she has to follow a prophecy to slay the Jabberwocky, just like at home, where she is forced to follow a strict plan, marrying Hamish. Also, no time passes back in London, so basically there's a lot to say that this is a dream. But the thing is, Alice and all of Underland's inhabitants think it's a real world, so let's look into the ways in which it could be real. The white rabbit runs through the garden at the beginning. Alice's bandersnatch cuts remain on her when she returns home, and we see the blue caterpillar in 2 different scenes in London. So its physical attributes prove it to be reality, and mental attributes prove it to be a dream. So which trumps the other? Well, we need even more evidence. Alice states that she thinks of 6 impossible things before breakfast, just like her father. The thing is, however, that these things actually happen. She claims that cats can disappear, that she can slay the Jabberwocky, that Wonderland actually exists, that cake can make you grow, that potions can make you shrink, and that animals can talk, all of which had happened. But the movie establishes that this is a real journey. They literally call it real, constantly. So how is it that she travels there in her dreams as a little girl? The original animated film was a dream, but this one attempts to establish that it is real. So is it? Not exactly. The only way that these physical and mental attributes can come together is that Alice is in a midlife crisis and is being driven to insanity. She is being forced to marry a man she doesn't want to by her mother, friends, family, and the groom's family. Her constant anxiety is driving her to insanity, bringing characters from her childhood into the real world to help her cope with the whole situation. These characters remind her of her father, who was an equally bonkers person, therefore soothing the frightened thoughts of Alice. She begins seeing things that nobody else apparently sees. The only exception to this is the blue caterpillar, who Hamish too sees on himself. Although it likely isn't actually blue, it's just her visions that make it blue. Her trip into her psychology begins by falling down a hole and hitting her head, sending her into her own subconscious. There, she meets bumbling representations of her friends at home. The March Hare is a representation of Aunt Imogen, what with the common insanity and tattered look they both share. Tweedledee and Tweedledum represent the bumbling idiot friends of Alice back in London. The Knave of Hearts represents her sister's husband, cheating and acting odd, to say the least. And Hamish's mother represents the Red Queen, with her requests of red roses, perfection of her world, and love of ruling that perfect world. Alice's job is to continue following her current path, follow the prophecy, but then kill the Jabberwocky, her expectations back home, empowering her in the real world to move on from her crisis. Her cuts remain, as her psyche has created them, and she keeps seeing the characters her mind has just given her a new emotional attachment to. Her father is brought into Wonderland via the Mad Hatter, who talks about things that are impossible and reassures her about the prophecy, telling her it's her choice, giving her exactly what she wanted. Subliminal reassurance from her father. From the look of Alice through the Looking Glasses trailers, this is supported. She is being watched by what appears to be psychologists and people assuming her insanity. But we really won't know until it's released, at which point I'll give my new thoughts. So yeah, Alice isn't just dreaming, but Wonderland isn't real. It's a mix of both. She brings her insanity from her memorable childhood into her midlife crisis to help her psyche cope with a life-changing decision. Unfortunately, her easily distracted and outlandish mind keeps these creatures with her and gives her what any normal doctor would call schizophrenia. This that can explain her psychotic trip to Wonderland. Delusions, hallucinations, and straight-up insanity. Psychosis also fits in, as it is just a form of schizophrenia for under 6 months. And her odd impulses to point at things, be rude, more hyper than her peers, and get terribly distracted are all symptoms of one of the most common mental disorders on the planet, ADD and ADHD. But the crazy thing is, get it crazy, schizophrenia and ADHD are connected. Intensive research has gone into how children with ADHD have a higher risk of getting schizophrenia as an adult. And to finalize, both schizophrenia and ADHD are hereditary, explaining why her father is just as outlandish as Alice, except his lack of serious delusions suggests he's only got ADHD. Tim Burton's Alice is one creative, impulsive, delusional, interesting character, kind of like Tim Burton. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer.
Why don't you follow your dreams?
Alice in Wonderland is a pretty good story, and the Tim Burton version has great effects and okay writing, although parts of it make very little sense. It's a bizarre film, to say the least. You either hate it or you love it, and I sit right in the middle. But this isn't a review, it's a theory. In fact, it's a sequel to my previous Wonderland theory. Watch that one first, because this one is on Alice Through the Looking Glass. It was requested and requested and requested and requested, and it's been a full year, so I have to make the follow-up I promised. And I hope you're prepared, because this theory takes everything I've said and drives it way deeper into the lore. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and let's begin. If you haven't seen my previous theory, definitely watch it right now. It talks about how all of Wonderland is Alice's delusion, that it's a figment of her imagination. But here's just the thing. I got a lot of comments from people who didn't understand what I meant. They commented things like, "Of course it's a dream. Didn't you read the original book?" And things like, "Tim Burton's movie isn't canon to the original story." And I don't think those people understood my video. I'm well aware that this movie is totally different from the original stories, and that's just the thing. My theories are on this movie, and this movie alone. The altered story Tim Burton created. I'm not at all talking about the older stories. Don't get that mixed up. And with that out of the way, do some theorizing. As I said before, in the first movie, Alice is going through a little crisis. She has to marry a man that she does not want to, so she brings back characters from her childhood to help her cope. She uses it to teach her lessons about how to handle the situation. The characters remind her of her father, and he was everything to her. This was all a pretty good theory, and it took a while to come up with, but then Through the Looking Glass came out, and I was flooded with comments. People were saying that everything I said was debunked by the sequel, and that I was so wrong. So I recently watched the movie, and I have one thing to say. It actually supports my theory. At the end of the first movie, the blue caterpillar is seen as a butterfly. He is flying alongside Alice. This is a figment of her imagination, just like how the caterpillar on Hamish wasn't actually blue. She just perceived it that way. And do you know why the blue butterfly is seen at the end of the movie? It's because she may have resolved one problem, one about marrying Hamish, but that does not mean she's done with Wonderland. In the second movie, when she returns to England from the sea, she discovers that Lord Ascot has died, and that Hamish has taken over. And Hamish wants Alice's ship, just to get revenge on her. She is stuck between another rock and a hard place, and she needs to resolve another crisis. And that's right when the blue butterfly shows up and takes her through a Wonderland looking glass, which, for some reason, happens to be in Lord Ascot's room. This is bizarre. So did Hamish's father actually know about Wonderland? Did his adventures teach him the truth about all of it? Or how about Rabbit Hole, which is also on Lord Ascot's property? Did he know about that too? Is Wonderland real? No, it is not. And no, he did not know about it at all. Because all of this, from the rabbit hole to the magic mirrors, are all a part of Alice's delusion. When Alice finds herself in the mental hospital, her mother tells her that she was found in Lord Ascot's room, on the floor, babbling nonsense. This means that she was on the ground, dreaming her insane dream of Wonderland. The whole time, she probably tried to follow the non-existent blue butterfly through a mirror, and she slammed into it, landing on the ground unconscious, just like how she hit her head in the rabbit hole. I don't know how much more proof I can give that it's all a delusion. Oh, but I can. We know that she goes to Wonderland so that she can use her fictional childhood characters, who remind her of her dad, to work her way through a crisis and learn lessons along the way. And the sheer fact that the Ascots and Alice's mother constantly talk about time, and Alice travels to Wonderland and finds that time is a person is no coincidence. Wonderland is her very own psyche. Her mother says that time is the enemy, and Alice learns that time is no enemy. It's as simple as that to prove that Tim Burton's incarnation is a psychotic delusion, and it's not a real adventure like they seem to push for in this movie. And again, this is all a theory on just Tim Burton's version. The original two books don't have anything to do with this theory, and neither does Alice Madness Returns or whatever, because they are all separate entities. But more evidence? I'd be happy to supply it. Hamish talks about how going out the open ocean makes a person crazy. He says it happened to Alice, and it also happened to her father. He says this literally as she is chasing a butterfly into a mirror. This overlapping conversation is no coincidence. I don't even know how my old theory could be disproven at this point. Maybe there's something I've been missing, but enough of that because I have more evidence. The fact that looking glasses appear whenever Alice wants them to is strange. They not only appear in Ascot's manor, but they also appear all over the course of time. When Alice is about to be caught by Time himself, she escapes through a mirror that suddenly appears as an escape route. Bizarre indeed. And at the end, when she finally learns her lesson and discovers how to resolve the crisis with Hamish, a looking glass appears right there in Time's castle. What? How unrealistic. It's almost like, oh, it favors Alice. More evidence. During the very sad parting scene between Alice and the Hatter, the Mad Hatter says that family is a very important thing, that you only get one. This was sort of a bonus lesson that Alice learned on her adventure, and look, Right here, she put it to good use. Only minutes later, she talks about how she will take her mother over any deal or any contract. But that isn't all.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct.
Because also in this parting scene, Alice says she fears that she will never see the Mad Hatter again. She is slowly letting go of him, and then he tells her the following. He says, "We shall meet in the Palace of Dreams in the Garden of Memory." Right here, he is literally telling Alice that he will meet her in her dreams. And then she tells him dreams aren't reality. And finally, he says the one thing that pushes my entire two-part theory into blatant truth. He says, dream, reality, who's to say which is which? The Mad Hatter is openly telling Alice that everything she has experienced up until this point has been a figment of her imagination. He is telling her that it doesn't matter what is reality and what is fake. This describes the symptoms of countless forms of legitimate mental disorders where reality cannot be differentiated from dream. In some ways, this is like schizophrenia, which I brought up in my other video. And geez, dream, reality, lack of differentiation. Is Alice in Wonderland actually Inception? But don't fear, theorizers here with more damn evidence. Why was the Mad Hatter fading away, getting sicker and sicker? One would assume it's because of this trinket he found, but look at him. He was slightly reclusive before Alice returned, but when she said she didn't believe him, he spiraled into turning white. I don't know how that happens. Oh yes, I do. Wonderland and the Mad Hatter are fueled by Alice's belief in them. So when Alice says how she doesn't believe in him, he starts to fizzle away. Only later, when he's on the brink of certain death, does Alice say she believes him. That and that alone saves his life. Not only does this prove that his life is in the hands of her belief, but that her giving up Wonderland altogether would indeed kill them all for good. Wonderland, dare I say Underland, is a fictitious world entirely powered by Alice Kingsley's developmental insanity. When she left the first time, look what it did to the Mad Hatter, as he slowly faded away as she forgot about all of them. Until, of course, she came back. And after the movie is over, Wonderland is gone forever. Sorry, but it's true. That's the purpose of the movie. After the first movie ended, we still saw the blue butterfly next to Alice, comforting her. But this time, at the end of this movie, we see no such thing. Only when the entire world turns into a paper recreation, for effect, do we see him appear. Wonderland is non-existent unless Alice says it is. When Alice appears in front of Hamish and the gang, they ask where the heck she came from. She jokingly says, from out of the walls. She is actually making fun of everything she's already done. Going through the walls and through the mirror. She never usually jokes about her insanity, but the fact that she now jokes about hysteria proves she's let go of what she once thought was real. Alice Kingsley has permanently shut the door to Wonderland, just like the Mad Hatter said she would. She would. I don't think there were any more direct sequel books in the original series that these movies are based off of, so we can assume that Alice is done. The only place she will see her friends anymore without blasting into insanity would be in her dreams, which is exactly what the Mad Hatter suggests. Or in other words, Alice's very own voice of reason. And that was my theory on Alice Through the Looking Glass. Tim Burton's version only. I hope you enjoyed that at least a little bit. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer.
Your spring collection became the hottest thing when 5 freelancers made a marketing campaign. They built your unique landing page.
Hello, I'm the Theorizer. A Megamind theory has been in the works for a whole year now, and I finally discovered something sort of worth the constant observing. Luckily, the polls suggest a Megamind video is a good idea, so let's analyze. Out of the entirety of this film, I'm particularly interested in the parts we are not given much information about. This is obviously Megamind's childhood. We are given very little information about his own planet or what caused its destruction. We see a black hole is responsible, though there's always the chance something shadier went on. That's for another day. Right now, we need to move further into the future. Megamind's first day of school. What always seemed very weird to me is how Megamind hung out of the jail. School only a few yards away. Why is it so close? Was this for comedic effect? Was it an exaggeration, a false memory of his life? No, it can't be that, because a couple scenes later we see it yet again at a different angle. It's like that in more than one scene. This school is right next to a maximum security prison. What kind of horrendous planner approved this? It's not even really a school, it's like a singular schoolhouse with a single teacher and a few quote-unquote gifted kids. But this is just according to the slogan. Gifted as in Megamind, gifted as in Metro Man, gifted as in apparently just all the normal children, and this girl who seems to have disabilities is included too. So is this school just for standard children, or is there something different about these children? It could just be a fun slogan, but then there's the frightening fact that right next door is a penitentiary housing quote-unquote criminally gifted. Little gifted kids, crazy gifted criminals. Coincidence? I think not. These two have got to be tied. There's something too strange with all of this. Want more evidence of a direct correlation? Happy to oblige. How about the fact that the main mode of this prison's transportation appears to be a school bus? It's branded with the prison name, but lo and behold, something else can be seen hidden and blurred for a split second behind young Megamind. A blatant confirmation that it belongs to the Metro City School District. Oh crap! Well, could just be an old bus that the prison was given by the school system, but the bus literally goes to the school still, indicating otherwise. It could all be nothing, but DreamWorks did make a point of having each side of the bus read different things, and they made a point of hiding one of the titles in plain sight. The animators at DreamWorks usually don't go out of their way to change things like this. Most newspapers in the film just have a set of keyboard letters repeated over and over because they kept typing to randomly fill the text slot. So for this to be of significance to them, it indicates they mean something more. Why would a children's school bus have bars on the windows? Why wouldn't the prison just paint over the words that say school district? Well, as I said, maybe the two truly are tied. If all of this wasn't proof enough that something shady was never explained, then simply observe the school room intensely. If you look at the bus drawn at the front of the room, it has a bunch of class children, and monitoring everything from the back, just there is a perfect depiction of the warden observing. Upon finding all of this, I had a single thought. Holy wow, these two are connected, obviously. Look at that. There's some reason that they keep a children's elementary school right next to a prison. They teach children who are gifted, hence why they sent Megamind and Metro Man there, but why? It seems to be a school of gifted children, intelligent, physically adept. Each of them has something, clearly including the girl they tried to single out. But why build the gifted school next to a prison for gifted villains? Government testing? Precaution in case things get out of hand with the kids that are too smart? There's nothing really special about the teacher, and the so-called gifted kids sing Itsy Bitsy Spider instead of doing anything actually important. There's something strange going on here, and I think I'm on to something. Now, I have minimal evidence for what I'm about to say, but I'd like to propose it. Metro Man's adoptive parents, according to a close close zoom I made on their presence are named Bobby and Sally, and they are unbelievably rich individuals. Look at their mansion and the amount of gear they gave their son to let him flourish. Their son is an alien, one who, like it or not, would be quite alienated from everybody else. They don't treat him as a human. Everybody, even his own parents, treat him as a superior being, whether they love him or even fear him, but not exactly. Even Metro Man quits at the end of the movie. He says he's gotten tired of it all. He feels alienated and bored, so he degrades himself into a bad singer to be like everybody else. Common sense tells us he feels this way about himself, and he even does show it. So in order to make him feel at home or to fit in, his parents could have done many things. They can't exactly make him more normal, but they can make everybody else seem a bit more equal to him. Sort of like a staged method of therapy, such as a youth group or a school for so-called gifted kids, to make him feel like he's fitting in. No children there are visibly gifted or worthy of going to a school with such a title. They're just normal kids. If his parents and the government did have a school constructed for their future savior's benefit, then it completely explains why he had such authority to do whatever he wanted with the school. Rip it out of the ground, move it out far towards a beach, use it as a hideout for years after its disestablishment, throw around the teacher, etc., etc. And it only leaves the question, why would they build it next to the prison of criminally gifted convicts? Well, it could be to monitor Metro Man's ego, but more likely, Megamind, the only one who could possibly contrast Metro Man. Both are aliens spared from a supermassive black hole with some form of an immense gift, who received polarizing lives. It's the perfect making for a hero. As this movie's moral states, a superhero can't exist unless there's a supervillain. They tortured Megamind relentlessly in school for no reason other than to torment him. The school builds Metro Man's ego uncontrollably, and they only stop bugging Megamind once he's officially made his decision to become a villain, like the grand plan we tried to achieve. And this movie's other grand moral is, yes, heroes and villains aren't born. They always have to be made. Now there's some good reasoning to this collection of evidence I've gathered. But why worship this kid? Why submit to this flying baby? It's as I mentioned before, deep down they all fear him. If his ego builds or even his fear of being alone, things could get very out of hand. They need someone he can divert his attention, someone who can make him feel good about himself, a perfect villain. And when Metro Man realizes the truth of what's happening, that's when he becomes humble again and finally tries to be like a normal human being. Watching the movie over and over again, I keep getting this feeling like the city thinks differently of Metro Man than we'd like to believe. They all convince themselves that they love him, but really think about him. The amount of danger and fear these people must live in is astounding. Out of Megamind, he really doesn't win, ever. The dear Metro Man is submitted to him. This film's goal is to really go for a different take on superhero stories, and this is more proof of it. But the people who feel slightly spooked by Metro Man, they've built this false dependence on him, a sort of indirect form of Stockholm Syndrome, a condition where a victim falls for their captor. Metro Man feels trapped by the public and media, and the public feels trapped by Metro Man. That's why it truly was such a brilliant idea to fake his death. The city is a vast sea of deficient sheeple. A very short time after Metro Man dies, they all care so deeply about the ex-villain who saved them this time. They follow the leader. They've all been misled, and it's genuinely frightening. On the surface, they all react so expectantly to everything. They boo the villain instead of cowering in fear. They overly cheer for the hero. But under the surface, the sense of brokenness is very much so visible. Metro Man's powers seem to come with a general sense of false heroism that only he can naturally contain. When Hal absorbed all of the power, he immediately treated himself like a god. He developed a horrendously blatant sense of hero syndrome, which is basically where someone puts other people in danger just so that they can save them and act like a hero. And oh, uncle goes nuts with this kind of thing. It's his brain. It cannot handle it all. And this is why people have the right to fear Metro Man. His power is uncontrollable, and the true fear he instills in people is an observation only apparent once you analyze and deduce your way to a shocker conclusion. The movie Megamind is fantastic, and I love every little bit of it. In very, very early 2018, I made a video on it featuring some of the most fantastic inductive reasoning I think I've ever put into a YouTube video. I'd recommend watching it first, since a lot of this video is just going to be touching up the largely rough edges of the last theory, which revolved around Metro Man's
Politics needs an upgrade. Our system of democracy has issues.
The movie Megamind is fantastic, and I first, since a lot of this video is just going to be largely rough edges of the last theory, which revolved around Metro Man's parents. Think of him as a god, a great and terrible entity who they feel the need to use at all costs. My theory was also that they intentionally shaped Megamind into a villain so that Metro Man could have a distraction and not become a villain himself. Great video, and you all seemed to absolutely love it. But I received some more evidence in the comments section, and I'm returning to touch it up. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and first we have the golden question. What if the children in the school are just kids of the prisoners? Now, most of the time when people comment things, and this applies to all my theories, Coraline wants video game wants all of them, either I've already discussed that very topic in another video, or I'd already considered it before making the video, and I dumped the idea. And this is no deception. The reason I ditched the idea of them being kids of the prisoners is because it doesn't make complete sense. Sure, they can visit their parents, but why place this school next to it, and why intentionally label them both as gifted too? There are just too many obvious logical holes in that idea, and it isn't normal or consistent with the logic the rest of this movie shows. Kids also are not super evil, like I think I implied they weren't. The last prison to teach possible criminals were gifted kids. This is evident in the activities we see the kids doing, and ultimately, in the end, I quite successfully tried to prove that it was all set up by Metro Man's adoptive parents to make him feel loved and special. So those two counter-arguments to the schoolhouse's abnormal proximity to the prison are dealt with. On to more pressing interests. I think I myself have more proof for Megamind's ability being staged by the government at Metro Man's parents' behest. Sure, they all bullied Megamind irrationally, but the warden also just kind of erases Megamind's several life sentences at the end. Sure, he saved the city, he's still overpowered, and his sentences were removed at the end. I believe this was because the prison took full responsibility for their actions in shaping Megamind's quasi-evil nature. But since the video came out far earlier this year, I've been continuously noticing further proof that the city is almost putting on an act to allow Megamind to escape and fight Metro Man. I'm serious. I cannot unsee this now. Firstly, Megamind and Metro Man have the same initials, MM. Were they subtly psychologically pushed into choosing these names by the government so that when Metro Man inevitably quit upon possibly discovering his life was a lie, the government could spend less money on the rebranding of the city's hero? No, that can't be, because the city itself was named after Metro Man. It has to be. Do you wish to know how I could possibly believe this? Well, we barely get to see a pathetic sliver of the boys' home planets, but on a big monitor in the background of the destruction, we can barely see what their planets' names are. If the city named itself after the race of its savior, then they really are pushing his narcissism to save him and take it out on the other superior being they've kept pinned in a prison to solidify his role as evil. This city plays along like a mass fiddle orchestra. The warden, after catching Megamind, is stupid enough to take the watch that was for Megamind. He should know better. It's like he's playing along. Megamind has been captured a presumed 83 to 88 times by now, but seriously, I don't know, the film says both. and is inconsistent when it wants to be, but that only indicates that when it is consistent, it means they want us to see it. Regardless of the evidence pointing to DreamWorks hiding this film with lore, we have to get back to solving it. Right, the evidence of the movie faking everything. After Megamind escapes at the beginning, the prison guards give him a whole 5 seconds to stand there and say, "I'll always be a villain," despite them immediately tackling the warden and jailing him only seconds prior. Even in his speech to the city, he says, "Who'd I be without you?" Interesting. Does he know they created his current psychology? He clearly loves to play along. Even more horrifying, what if everyone, he clearly, interesting, does he know? Speech to the city, he says, "Who'd I be without you?" In prior, even in his speech to the city, he says, "Who'd I be without you?" Interesting, does he know they created his current psychology? He clearly loves to play along. Even more horrifying, what if everyone, Megamind, Metro Man, Roxanne, Richie, everyone knows it's an act? What if this movie is all fake? And yes, I know this is meta supreme, but in this movie, everyone is putting on a show. It makes sense up until like the end, sort of. Maybe Megamind is behind the whole plan of the government, but doesn't even know it. Well, that's all impossible. But then we get things like this. Roxanne is knocked out unconscious in the car when Minion kidnaps her. When Megamind then proceeds to throw a ton of scary weapons at her, she says, yes, your alligators. I was thinking about it on the way over. Excuse me, woman, but you were completely unconscious and had no idea you'd been kidnapped, you psychic journalist. So how could she think about it if she had no idea she was even coming? Well, either this is her or DreamWorks being inconsistent. So either it's proof that she's faking it, by extension everyone, or it's proof that DreamWorks is once again being selective with what they deem is important for the quasi-internet detectives to see. Because then they have just one scene later, phenomenal attention to detail. You can see Metro Man walk behind Megamind. Yes, when it's revealed later in the film that Metro Man used super speed to go for a walk, he appeared behind Megamind, and here you can see a glimpse of him for a split second on the cameras. But, stupid DreamWorks, it's when Megamind is saying something different. Metro Man appeared when Megamind was screaming, "Fire!" not when he was paused. It's not even the same moment. So they have this weird half attention to detail that makes it not even the same. It appeared when Megamind was screaming. When Megamind is saying something different. Metro Man appeared when Megamind was screaming, "Fire!" not when he was paused. It's not even the same moment. So they have this weird half attention to detail that makes it increasingly difficult to differentiate which things they intend to be inconsistent.
This is a Hello Fresh box with everything you need to turn these ingredients into
It's not even the same moment. We have this weird half attention to detail that makes it increasingly difficult to differentiate which things they intend to be inconsistent. They go so far as to show this one special brainbot move up from the crowd and go in front of Metro Man just so that they could prove there was a direct way in which Megamind was seeing Metro Man via camera. And this is very consistent. They didn't have to do this. Then you see a scene where the warden is still imprisoned and watching the TV in Megamind's cell. Wouldn't the other cops have let him out by now? And then Megamind, he runs into the mayoral office and pretends not to know what windows are. You idiot. You had a schoolhouse full of them. You have a car with them in it. You even discuss them later. Are you faking? Is it an act? Well, duh, it's a movie, but I mean inside the movie's plot, is it act? And then we get brilliant consistency, like the ice cubes he trapped the garbage in being rehydrated after it rains. Megamind also says various words weirdly that he doesn't mess up later. This movie shares so much lore in the form of subtlety. And then, at the end, Megamind sums up what he calls his day, saying he killed Metro Man, lost Roxanne, etc. Even later, Bernard says he had a terrible day. You mean, tell me, that despite the fact that it changed it, you mean, even later, Bernard says he had a terrible day. You mean, tell me, that despite the fact that it changed to daytime so many times throughout the movie, it was still one day. No. An act? Lol. Now I'll have some idiotic haters telling me that I'm critiquing the movie for stupid things. I am not critiquing. I am differentiating deduction. I don't want to have another stupid dumb ways to die video misunderstanding of blunt people with no comprehension of what I'm doing. We see more inconsistency when Titan says to Roxanne, I know everything about you. I didn't know what kind of flowers you liked, so I got all of them. And it isn't played off as a joke at all. Titan literally says that he knows all about her, and then he says he doesn't know what flowers she likes. Like what? And when Megamind fights Hal, half the buildings in the city are abandoned. It's all a facade. There's nothing in them. It's like fake infrastructure is in place for battles to occur and damage to be apparently seen. And we see that whenever someone uses the watch, their eye color stays the same. Megamind has these intentionally huge green eyes, and they consume Bernard whenever he pretends to be him. Roxanne didn't notice this or his similar voice, or maybe she did, and she pretended to love him all that time, so he could clean up the park and return the paintings until her final kiss, where she'd intentionally pushed the buttons on his watch and used her news reporter acting skills to pretend to be shocked at this so-called revelation. Oh my God.
That's obviously what I've been saying. That's what I've been saying. Whenever I saw that kissing in the restaurant, and then her pressing the watch, how can she accidentally, when she's gonna put her eyes closed and kiss him? Never mind, with her eyes closed at the restaurant. How can she accidentally, when she's got her eyes closed, push the button in the watch? Unless she's acting it up. She's acting.
But then we see another inconsistency. When Minion poses as Megamind, his eyes aren't consistent with this logic, but they were for the Warden. What? Is this movie tailoring its logic to give us a mini plot twist? Why? And why does the voice change for some characters, but for others who use the watch, it doesn't? Megamind probably knew Minion was the Warden by looking at his eyes. I mean, that's why he apologized to Minion, to the so-called Warden. He knew it. The eyes are clear. Anyways, I gotta chill out before me being too extra is contagious to them ratchet gangstas. If I reground myself, we can point out the most obvious of the obvious. They have a super technical looking system outside Megamind's cell, because they want him to think he's being captured seriously. They looked shocked when he forfeits, but the guards just straight up sleep on the job. They should be able to keep him locked up for good unless this whole system is just for show. And as I said in the last video, most of the newspapers just say gibberish in them, but not the ones during the opening credits. I need to see those in HD, but I only have Netflix, which actually prevents my computer from screenshotting them. So if you have the ability to snap them, send them to me on Twitter at @TheTheorizer.YT. That would be helpful. It would also give me deep insight into the thought process of Warden at that time. And also comment your theories below. But before I go, I want to mention something super important. On the last video, commenter Sandra Sanderson commented that apparently in the Danish dub for the movie, they say the school is literally a part of the prison, basically confirming that whole theory of mine regarding the Warden being the bus. Boom! That's all today. Theory of mine regarding the Warden being the bus. Boom! That's all today, but I have a lot more, and in just a couple weeks, I'm going to be making an amazingly in-depth video into Megamind's home planet story, so stay tuned by clicking the subscribe button. Do it. Also click the bell and receive all notifications so you'll be, well, notified. Recently, there have been these Spanish, Brazilian, Russian, and European YouTube channels that blatantly steal my content and other theory channels' content. Russian and European YouTube steal my content and other theory channels' content. They take the whole theory, will translate it into another language, getting millions of views on my and other theory channels' intellectual property. And in the bottom of the description, they link my video, simply saying, here's the English version. I don't like this. I strongly dislike it when anyone takes my content and basically reposts it in a different language, or the same language for that matter. They don't even ask for permission. No, you don't have permission. Mainly, I detest the theft of evidence I've spent weeks setting out to discover, which I hate most. And half of the so-called evidence in my videos isn't even true evidence. It's just mini theories I've created, so stop stealing my stuff. Because all of these little theories I am creating myself, and anyone who reposts is technically stealing. That's just a little blurb because multiple people internationally now have posted this specific theory, as well as my Coraline ones and many other theories. Over and over again. Oops, I theorized.
Your all-new e-commerce site that was built by top freelancers on Fiverr is up. They built it and expertly marketed it and promoted it.
Yes, I'm back all ready to work some more Megamind, except this time I'm going to temporarily depart from my grand conspiracy of Metro City and instead begin a much-needed mass investigation of Megamind's home planet, as I promised a couple weeks ago, and in fact back in January too. Oh, this will be fun. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and if you recall last video, I brought up a very key point. Megamind's home planet is confirmed to be called Mega Planet, as seen on the big screen in the corner, and Metro Man's home planet is Metro Planet. According to the Megamind Jr. novel, there is a mysterious third planet in the planetary system, which was eaten by the black hole before we got to see it, but I'll get to that later, because we may not know the deepest inner workings of this fallen society, but there appear to be some general rules we can discover by looking simply at the brief scene we get. Megamind is grabbed by his parents as his planet is spaghettified by a collapsed solar body. He is rushed past a monitor that displays a time limit and a diagram of the solar system being demolished. He is rushed to an escape pod, given a minion, and his parents say he's destined for greatness, apparently, before firing him away. So why is he destined for greatness? Why didn't anybody else leave with him? I mean, we have enough technology to allow for this, as we see, and they're an incredibly advanced looking planet. All of this odd evidence indicates something isn't quite right with the picture. Why did they only save this baby? Did they want to collapse with their black hole? Did they want to, however, send away one super smart baby to go to a far less fortunate planet so we could give them their alien benefits? I mean, possibly. I mean, it seems similar also to what Metro Man's planet likely intended to do, but why did nobody else escape? They all appear to have super high tech, but why do they wish to destroy all of themselves but one? Seriously, like, Megamind can easily escape the planet. Why can't the rest of them? They have high tech. We see it in Megamind's toys. Well, maybe they did it to themselves, because maybe, like Metro Man and Megamind, were destined to, they fought against each other. Seriously, think of Metro Man and Megamind's almost innate will to oppose each other. I feel like their races will have some sort of lasting battle or fun feud. They'll go down so long as their enemy goes down with their intently advanced technology. They should have easily been able to predict and evade the black hole, evacuate their planet early and save everyone, but they chose to stay. Megamind's planet wanted this to happen, and so did Metro Man's home planet. If they wanted to go down together, which is currently the best explanation for them staying, then I have a question. Did one of them use the black hole as a weapon, say, by hiding it from the other's technology, or even futuristically creating it? I have no proof for it, just what little logic deduction I can use, but as you can see, there's a whole other story here. And I guess it's also expected that, like our government probably would do, Megamind's home planet's government likely hid all of this from the public as there is mass hysteria, but that is likely to be expected, I guess. Megamind was the sole survivor of his planet's cataclysm. Why him? Was he saved because he had amazing intellect? Well, we don't know for sure, but I think we can assume that his whole race was naturally intelligent, as shown by the big heads. So then, perhaps he was special in another way. Well, how? The only thing that comes to mind is that he was from some sort of special program on their planet, or from a family or a group of elite certain people. Perhaps a royal family on their planet, or some other thing that entitled him to be the only survivor by supposed request of the government who knew of the impending planetary demolition. But survival from the black hole, that's not all his royalties entitled to. Are we just going to overlook the fact that his parents gave him a damn fish and called his minion? What entitles him to have a minion? What kind of baby is worthy of a legitimate servant? Certainly no ordinary member of this alien race. Megamind's special. Maybe they birthed him 8 days before the black hole on purpose. They planned ahead and, along with their enemy planet, sent away their greatest legacies while killing themselves. Some sort of ridiculous genocidal dramatic flair between their epic battling. Now, I would say that Megamind's planet was the evil one in the pair. They seemed fairly nice from the 15 seconds or so we got to see them. It's Metro Man who was inherently narcissistic. It made sense. Megamind's parents said that he was destined for greatness, so the opposite side of the coin would be infamy. Not that this is an important point or anything, but yeah, their dominant physical abilities likely would have garnered the same reaction I theorized Metro City had on Metro Man, but the planet would have it from the rest of their galactic quadrant. And so, all of this comes down to one being. Only one person has the true knowledge of all these societies. Megamind and Metro Man hadn't been fully exposed yet to the worlds before their annihilations. The rest of both races were obliterated, all but one. Minion is the only thing that has experience with these societies. Megamind's parents say that Minion will take care of Megamind, so clearly Minion is experienced with their world when Megamind is a baby. And we hear his adult voice yelp when Megamind blows up corn in the school, so he is the only being that knows everything. Yet he says nothing about it in the movie. Well, let's look closer. He's a fish, a very small fish, with maxed out intelligence for his tiny species. Why? Well, let's look even closer. Minion is clearly intended to be able to handle any planet. H2O is one of them, and both Metro Planet and Mega Planet clearly had an incredibly similar atmosphere to Earth, since Metro and Megamind both show no negative effects when inhaling our air. So they gave Megamind a minion that could adapt to water so he could fit on any planet Megamind went to as well. I mean, clearly Megamind's family targeted Earth regardless, since it looked aquatic with its blue water and atmosphere, so hence an aquatic minion. But again, we aren't looking close enough. So I looked at Minion, really looked at him, and I found the antenna on top of his head. How did I not notice this? This is never explained. Why is something electronic going on with this fish? What with the antenna? What is he sending or receiving? What is inside of this fish's brain? And then this tiny, small, little animal, most likely the main species from that aforementioned third planet, was the only way to fit another person into the escape pod. They needed a small animal who could fit into the pod with baby Megamind, because clearly the parents could not. It was also likely a part of the genocidal agreement between the two planets who sent off their prodigies to not send off anyone else with them. I believe this thing was the ultimate workaround. I believe that Megamind's race snuck another one of their own into the pod in the form of this fish. This thing has the transplanted brain of Megamind's brother.
Oh, but stupid theorizer, what proof do you have that it's his brother?
Well, sarcastic hypothetical viewer who sounds identically to me, it might not be his brother. It could be, like he is, an actual minion or butler of the family. It doesn't matter which acquaintance of Megamind's family it is. It's an experienced, related member of Megamind's race inside of this damn fish. Megamind's family likely struck a deal with this mysterious third planet, in which the fishies got to save one member of their species at the cost of that fish's mind being taken away and replaced with what we know as Minion. And it is an antenna. Clearly, it's what Megamind used to allow Minion to tune into his big gorilla suit and control it perfectly. Megamind's family snuck a fish into the escape pod whose mind had secretly been electronically reconnected to a servant of Megamind's government. This let them save one member of that third planet's race while simultaneously breaking their prodigy agreement with Metroman's planet to better benefit Megamind in stopping the true villain in the duo of races they've spared from the black hole. Metroman, another genius baby prince from a dominant and narcissistic race of humanoid supers, is the true villain in the duo, as proven near unequivocally in my January logical induction of this movie's Metro City hive mind. Case rested. Click subscribe for more of, whatever the this is. If you want to make sure you get my next video, click that little bell and select all notifications as opposed to occasionals, or so YouTube's support team informs me is recommended to recommend. This was an interesting, quick, developmental theory. I suppose the fish could just be a hyper-smart member of that third planet, but I am sticking to my theory that he's the main race of that third planet, because they explain nothing more about it. But I might return to it later. It depends on what I continue to think about. Until then, I am the Theorizer. Kung Fu Panda is a really wonderful series. It's one of DreamWorks' best work. Dare I say it is their dream work. And I've had some fun cracking it in the past year and a half. I started by making my Oogway theory, which is what I am revising today. Then after I got my microphone, I made another video, which was honestly crappy and subpar, but I was still getting used to the whole microphone setup, and I prioritized that, unfortunately. But because my Oogway theory had some worth to it, I figured I'd revise that one. For those of you who don't know, when I say revise, I mean I'm taking one of my older videos and warping what I originally came up with, making it much more improved. Usually the revision ends up being much different from the original, so I'm hyped to get into this. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and I'm preparing to mass upload a ton of videos at once, and this will be one of them. So what I'll be doing today is altering my first Kung Fu Panda theory. In this theory, I discussed how certain things in the movies weren't very logical, and I explained how they could be logical and how it totally changes the story. The who is dead theory is my second one, and I want to steer as far away from that one as possible, so we'll only be sticking to the parts of my original Oogway theory. Let's go. Master Oogway is a pivotal character in the Kung Fu Panda series, and when I saw him in the third, I was all like, oh yes, I've been prepping for this since movie number 2. But Oogway's a fairly suspicious character. He's not evil or anything, but there's a lot in which he hasn't proved you. You probably haven't wondered about this, but I have. Am I the only one who finds it bizarre that Tai Lung was just dropped off on the porch of a martial arts training station? Like, I realize that it's a kind place with people who can care for him, but it's also a place of constant peril and danger, with its inhabitants being masters of violence. I just find it a bit odd that anyone in their right mind would actually do this. Poe's mother abandoned him in a radish box, but that was because she was about to be murdered by a feathered freak. But let's come back to this in a minute. We know that Oogway's lifelong goal for Shifu was to help him achieve inner peace. And how does Oogway go about doing this? He uses Po. If you haven't noticed, Po is ultimately the root to Shifu's inner peace. A student who would be taken under his wing for his gigantic Dumbo ears, and Poe's actions lead Shifu to finally mastering inner peace, putting his frets about Talon to rest when his own student finishes the job. But what is the relevance of any of this? Well, prepare to have your whole perception of Master Oogway change. My theory is that Tai Lung was a failed attempt. Oogway always knew the Dragon Warrior would turn out to be both. So why even bother with Tai Lung? Inner peace. A baby snow leopard at the front door of a martial arts training academy. Old Oogway pushing his student to his potential. Oogway took the baby at the door. Sounds a bit far-fetched, let me explain a little more. Right there, right when Shifu opens the door, it's been put there. And this is exactly the kind of thing Oogway would do. A child raising a child is a route to inner peace. Becoming a parent, it changes Shifu. But Tai Lung turns sour and undoes all the peace Shifu gained from raising him. As we see, this affects Shifu in detrimental ways. He can't even hurt Tai Lung. In DreamWorks' rendition of China, you can openly adopt anybody. The best and most immediate example, of course, being the feathered flyer of Mr. Pink. He openly adopts Po right after finding him. So tell me just how far-fetched it is for Oogway to do the same. This is all supported in how Shifu and Oogway act. I find it genuinely hilarious that Oogway, a tortoise having total control over his immortality, kills himself right as he predicts Tai Lung has escaped. He isn't cowering, and he isn't randomly dying. He is simply letting Po do the work. Po needs to be the Dragon Warrior. Shifu's student needs to succeed, and Shifu masters inner peace, just as Oogway had so desperately wanted it to. Tai Lung, the student that failed at encapsulating the image of the Dragon Warrior. Oogway has a pattern of sending Shifu unique kids, but this one backfired, and hard, leading to a Dragon Warrior versus anti-Dragon Warrior 1v1. Oogway is smart. He plans things centuries ahead of time. It's just how he is. Random baby on the Jade Palace steps. Sneaky old bag with his perfect pink peach tree. Hear what Oogway's constant motto is. There are no accidents. No accidents? Then how could you mischievous millenarian, have ever even considered Tai Lung in the first place? You have not intervened sooner. How could you consider him to be the Dragon Warrior in the slightest? If you're so psychic, then why would you allow Shifu to train him all those years? If you are a prophet that lacks accidents and can detect if someone is a legend or a nation just by looking at them, then why would you start all of this to begin with? The answer is really simple. Realizing the fault in Tai Lung immediately, Oogway let Shifu train him. It kept Shifu preoccupied with happiness, but simultaneously, this had him trained into the anti-Dragon Warrior. Shifu's inner peace is directly in Reject's main priority. In his not final words, he says that Po must fulfill his destiny, just as Shifu had to fulfill his. And what is Shifu's destiny? To let go of the illusion of control. Oogway speaks in elusive riddles and metaphors, and right here, he is referring to how Po will become the Dragon Warrior. He is telling Shifu that things will flow as they should, and that Shifu can't have control of every aspect. From this perspective, Tai Lung's rage is extremely justified. He rambles on about how it was Shifu who pushed him to training until his bones cracked, and it was Shifu who filled his head with dreams of becoming the Dragon Warrior. I even translated Tai Lung into English, and it translates to Great Dragon. And finally, he says that it was Shifu who denied him his destiny. Okay, Tai Lung, hold up. Even Shifu says that it was clearly Oogway who denied your destiny. It was Oogway who chose not to intervene all those years, building up your passion to crush it. And it was Oogway who taught Shifu how to train harshly. So, honest to God, what else could Oogway have done that night? Why would someone dash up the hundreds upon hundreds of Jade Palace steps when they could just as easily drop off their child in a town populated with plenty of kind, safe people? In the spirit realm, Oogway tells Po that he was to be his true successor, and that he chose Po as he could tell he symbolized the yin and yang. He saw the past and future of Kung Fu when he looked at Po. He also implies to Po and literally tells Kai that he set Po on his path so that Kai wouldn't stop. That's what the Dragon Warrior is, the protector of Kung Fu, bearer of the yin yang, defeater of Kai, and Oogway's successor, which leads to the final question and the very interesting implication of, if Po is Oogway's successor, then was Oogway the original Dragon Warrior? Oogway's symbol on his cape is of a yin-yang symbol composed of a long serpent-like shape with spiraling appendages. A dragon, perhaps? I don't know. It's meant to be art and therefore metaphorically displayed, so how about the fact that the Jade Palace is modeled with dragon imagery everywhere, and it was Oogway who built it? It's just that all of this is an implication of Oogway's logic. This is all for another theory turn. And so, before I finish off today's video, there was something else that I noticed, which may or may not be correct. The first movie's villain is Tai Lung. He is a vicious, enraged, active villain. The second movie has Chen. He is much more graceful with his movements and usually avoids physical contact, preferring the usage of sophisticated weaponry. The yin and yang represent two halves of the universe. Yin is the passive, female, earthly aspect, and yang is the heated, active male side. And these two villains wanted to become both the yin and the yang. Tai Lung wanted the Dragon Scroll, which embodies the yin-yang, and Chen wanted to literally become it, but both failed. Do you know why? Because they both only demonstrated one half. Po, on the other hand, shows all aspects of both sides. That is what Oogway saw in him, his calmness, but also his extravagance, his body shape and colors. And the third movie has Kai, who represents both halves, but he is sort of like an anti-yin-yang, demonstrating everything that it shouldn't. So that's my theory on Kung Fu Panda. Wrong or right, I still think it's a very interesting topic for discussion, and I don't want to be accused of slandering Oogway like in my last video. Regardless, these movies are my favorite DreamWorks movies. Next to, of course, a couple others, but they're definitely in my top 3 favorite franchises. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't, and recently YouTube has been a bit broken, so click the little bell icon next to my channel name, and you'll certainly be notified whenever I upload. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer.
Using Squarespace helped my business grow from a journal to a website, store, and class platform.
Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and I absolutely love animated movies. I'm so sorry I haven't gotten around to doing really much of them lately. Anyways, today I'm going to be looking at the two main of 2018, so here you go. And today I'm going to be looking at the two main villains of easily the funniest DreamWorks films, the Madagascar franchise. For those who are unaware, in the first Madagascar film, all of the animals have escaped the zoo, and they've arrived at Grand Central Station, where all of the humans are running wild and terrible. All except an old lady, that is, who is just walking slowly and casually until she suddenly lashes out insanely and viciously attacks Alex the lion with karate. Yes, it is bizarre that he has such insane attacking abilities and the capability to literally flip a multi-hundred-pound lion. Then she yells Mad Kitty at him. When the police have the animals surrounded, the old woman somehow bypasses their blockade and disables Alex by destroying his testicles. We also see her in the Christmas special entitled The Madagascar penguins in a Christmas caper. She purchases private entitled Alex by destroying his testicles. We also see her in the Christmas special entitled The Madagascar Penguins in a Christmas Caper. We also somehow bypasses their blockade and disables Alex by destroying his testicles. We also see her in the Christmas special entitled The Madagascar Penguins in a Christmas Caper. We also see her in the Christmas special and disables Alex by destroying his testicles. We also see her in the Christmas Alex by destroying his testicles. We also see her in the Christmas special entitled The Madagascar Penguins in a Christmas Caper. She purchases Private the penguin, thinking he's a chew toy she can give to her poodle, Mr. Chew. While she sits watching the game, her dog fights the penguins behind her, and when she realizes what's happened, she blames the dog for her trashed apartment. It's not until Madagascar escaped to Africa that we see her again, and this time, not as a cameo. She's the main villain. She's on an African tour, and she encounters Alex again. She whacks him with her handbag some more, and he yanks her from the touring vehicle. The fight that ensues really demonstrates her abilities to us, whatever skill she's trained in. Obviously, she has some sort of formal training in, I'm assuming, karate, or at least what's left of it now that she's in old age. The rest of the film involves her methodically calming down a massive group of panicked tourists, establishing an entire African safe haven, preaching fearlessness, and even beating up an even larger lion. According to the bonus disc information, she brought said massive lion back to New York in a kitty cage. I'm assuming she's moved on from Mr. Chew at this point. But this old woman, known only as Nana, is nothing in comparison to the third film's villain, Captain Chantal Dubois, the unrelenting animal control officer hired to capture a group of animals. She's got Nana's abilities, but to the utmost extreme. It looks like she's trained in the most effective fighting styles, perhaps Krav Maga, and definitely parkour. Her ability turns back so powerful that she borders the abilities of a Terminator. That's her equivalent. There's no doubt about whether she's trained or not. This woman is a titan of body control. She can survive anything she's hit with, and she won't be slowed down at all. She has a deep understanding of the animal's psyche and how to communicate with them. She doesn't second guess their massive plane or the fact that they're driving cars, but her visions, impulsive, reckless determination, and her perception of reality exceeding ours meets her with almost every single symptom of what psychologists would call schizophrenia. She sees reality in frames, which allows her to dodge dozens of speeding bananas and allows her to roll out from beneath a train at the perfect time. She knows the exact placements to make in order to crash through windows and walls. She knows how to jump extremely high, and she's been trained on how to land from massive heights. She was only caught by the police when she overestimated her smarts, and she fooled them all in a matter of hours, trapping them in their own cell. She was only outwitted by the penguins when she thought the circus was run by an actual human. She apparently has the ability to heal her partners with her voice, and she ultimately succeeded in returning Alex to the zoo. Case in point, she's been trained to the maximum, only being defeated with her own tactics, tranquilization. She's one of the most swift humans in the entire world, capturing hundreds of animals, including our very own Mr. Chew, which brings me to my main point, the mind-blowingly concealed connection between Chantal and Nana. Someone who's a normal viewer might say, it's just a kid's movie, they aren't connected, it's all for comedy. I would refer them to one of my many other videos on DreamWorks films to convince them otherwise. Someone who's a smart viewer, one who likes to think outside the box and theorize, might say that there's a chance of them being biologically related. You just need to look for the evidence, such as the rare trait of blue eyes they share, or other little genetic similarities. But someone who's an intelligent viewer, someone who considers all possibilities of critical thought, might say that the relationship goes far deeper than that. And it definitely does.
People always ask me what app I use to make my videos, and the truth is, it's so easy. It's almost
First off, Captain Dubois is obviously schizophrenic. She sees hallucinations of animal musk. She has clear delusions of being an unstoppable goddess of animal entrapment. She has rapidly changing moods when she's in her mode, although she has a great lack of emotion overall. She's very apathetic and has no care about the repercussions of her actions. She's all around quite unstable. But could this simply have been a result of training? We'll get back to that in a minute. Nana is Russian, as indicated by her accent and big fluffy hat I've seen on other stereotypical Russians. Dubois is very obviously French, as they established many times, so a biological relationship is very unlikely. Not impossible, mind you, but still very unlikely. There's the chance that they could have been trained together, though. Nana has clearly got less abilities than Dubois, but that's just because of her very old age. They have the same methods of attack, except Nana's elderliness reduces her to simple flipping, kicking, and punching. In Madagascar 2, the tour guide approaches Nana after she's been brutally attacked, and she's totally fine. He tells her she's one tough cookie. Nana promptly says, "Brownies, Troop 416, Yonkers." Brownies are a subdivision of Girl Scouts for those unaware. So she was a Girl Scout when she was younger, about age 7 to 10, if she was a brownie. And Girl Scouts are a worldwide thing, so it could have been in Russia, though it's very improbable based on the context. Besides, she says Yonkers. Yonkers is a city in New York State. It's very close to New York City. But here's where we encounter a problem with the plot. And on this channel, plot holes don't exist. Whenever I find one, I exploit it because they're great canonical evidence for a theory. The plot hole is this. Nana, while fluent in English, has a very thick Russian accent and indicates to the viewer that she's lived there for quite some time. If she moved to New York when she was 7 to join Girl Scouts, then there's a good chance that her accent would easily morph into an American one as she finished growing up. There's not a 100% chance that it would have, but it's very probable. So is she lying then about being a Girl Scout? What purpose would that serve? Well, there's definitely more. Notice how she responds to the man very quickly when he simply says, "Cookie."
You are one tough cookie.
Troop 416, Yonkers.
A word even being used in the context of an actual cookie, like Girl Scout itself, but rather just, "You're one tough cookie." She immediately jumps to telling this lie. It's almost like she wasn't responding to the word cookie, but rather to him saying, "You're tough." It's a psychology thing. For people to have prepared statements and to give too much detail when they're lying, to respond fast and prepped. So if she's hiding her karate training by masking it as a part of Girl Scouts, why? What is the purpose? Why conceal her true training? It means it's something confidential and important, not just a karate class, certainly not damn Girl Scouts. It's something deeper, something that also gives her this ability to live in the woods, construct a miniature civilization, and calm down a massive amount of people. Something that warrants her having multiple secure locks on her apartment door. Something that I'll get back to in just a moment. So that was shady and deeply interwoven. But let's move on to someone extremely crucial to bridge the gap between Chantel and Nana. That someone being Mr. Chu, Nana's dog. As we know from the Christmas Caper special, Mr. Chu is a very old dog. He's lived with Nana since she was quite young. He's old, and appears to be actually rabid. He may live in a New York apartment, but we can see from pictures on Nana's wall that she took him on a previous trip to Africa. Seems to be a regular thing for her, but get this, Africa is a high-risk zone for contracting rabies, and certainly is where he could have gotten it. namely because the last happy picture of him shown during the credits is the Africa one. The following picture is just a silhouette image of him with crazily sharp teeth. Then the pictures end. It's like he just contracted it. He eats random objects that aren't food. He has a viciously open jaw, abnormal aggression, bloodshot eyes indicating a possible fever, chronic excitability, signs of drooling, and a lack of coordination as he jumps around like a maniac. Mr. Chu acts normal around Nana, but when alone or when his silhouette was being created in the presence of a person he did not know, his emotions shift rapidly and he goes crazy, like rabies causes dogs to do. The only problem is that rabies in dogs lasts for 10 days before they die, and that would mean something rather sad. It would mean Nana and Mr. Chu had just gotten back from their annual winter trip to Africa, and she had him put down due to the rabies, likely after she assumed he destroyed her apartment. Many people go on trips to hot climates during the winter so they can escape the cold, especially when they live in a place like New York. We later see her in Madagascar 1, which takes place after the special, and she has a deep hatred for animals such as lions, perhaps because she's depressed that she had to put her canine down. She used to go so far as to buy Mr. Chu's stuffed animals of Alex, but now she's depressed that her multi-decade-old poodle has died. In Madagascar 2, she goes on her annual trip again to honor Mr. Chu, and as revealed in the bonus commentary, she picks up Makunga and takes him home in a cage. Well, that was one massive but accurate tangent I just blew on. It's a rabies in my grander theory. Take a moment to again ask a question. How does Mr. Chu make an appearance on Dubois' wall? Well, the only way this could possibly happen is if Anna hired someone she knew could get the job done. Chantal Dubois. And that is Mr. Chu on her wall. It isn't just a reused dog model poodle by DreamWorks. That's his character. To prove this, just look at how most of the other animals on the wall were not modeled for this occasion and are actually repeated over and over on the wall. And of the couple models that aren't repeated, Mr. Chu is one of them. If you still choose not to believe that, then you can tell by the reddened eyes that it is Mr. Chu. These films are very superficial, but when you find any small thread you can tug, it pulls open the entire nether side of these films. Everything we aren't shown, and it all connects. So now we have direct proof that they know each other. It's all here, but how do they know each other? Well, we must move back to the point about their training. Captain Dubois has a chance of being Russian, though her French last name says otherwise, and she isn't the type to get married, let alone get a new last name. Her accent could have redeveloped over time. That's all less possible. The voice actress almost makes Dubois sound like a younger, more French version of Nana, but it is still very improbable. So perhaps they're friends, trained together, the skills they share. And the only job required of such training that I can think of that would require Nana to compulsively spew a prepared lie about would be some sort of secret spy team or police force. Based off of her age and her locations, Nana matches closest up for, I kid you not, the KGB, a decommissioned Russian spy chilling New York. Chantal Dubois matches closest to the DGSE, the intelligence agency friends. She'd have been decommissioned after the stress-induced psychosis and retired to an animal control officer to fit her love of taxidermy. However, these two intelligence agencies are decades and countries apart. There's barely a connection at all we could use in this situation. Nana would have been trained before Dubois was conceived, and all of this proves one thing. Despite everything I've been saying, there is still one possible biological connection, and that is Dubois being Nana's niece. Dubois' French last name wouldn't need to be given for marriage so long as her father was French, but Dubois' mother could very well have been Russian, and Agent 2, Nana's sister, and that training could have rubbed off onto Dubois. It's the only way, genetically, logically, and what is received when these evidence threads are connected. Chantal Dubois' mother is the sister of Nana. From a young age, Dubois showed a keenness for animal abuse, as we know from her little speech at the beginning. Such parents logically would have had her distracted with something else. Parkour, Krav Maga. Perhaps Chantal's mother was a KGB spy inside of France. and she married her father when the KGB was dissolved. Chantal is French. Chantal is also Russian. The films make sense, and as crazy as this theory sounds, you cannot deny the evidence shown. Whether it be the mega lock on Nana's door, or Mr. Chu pinned to Chantal's wall, there's only one thing that can connect it all. And I've done, to the best of my ability, what these viewers of Madagascar have already tried, tying two main female villains together. I hope you were enthralled, or in the very least, entertained. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer.